Good afternoon. I'd like to welcome everyone to the May 21st hearings before the Baltimore Municipal and Zoning Appeals Board. Before we get started, we have a few preliminary items. Please turn off your cell phones or other devices that make noise or may ring. Not only do they disturb the proceedings here, but they also interfere with the recordation of our proceedings here today. We have one case that was postponed, and that is 2018-296, 2701 Boston Street. If you're here for that case, make sure you let us know, or you're signed in here, so we will inform you when that case will be rescheduled. We're going to call the cases generally as they appear on the docket. When I call your case, come up, the appellant will stand to my left. Anyone in opposition will stand to my right. Procedure that will follow today is the appellant will present his or her case. Any opposition will have the opportunity to present their case, and then the appellant will have the opportunity to close, and that will end the proceedings. We won't be going back and forth between parties here today. We will vote on the appeals that are heard today at the end of the docket. If you would like to stick around, you certainly can. Otherwise, you can call the zoning office tomorrow morning and get our decision, and that number is 410-396-4301. And I'll do that one more time, 410-396-4301. We do have several cases today that opposition has signed in. We have found that sometimes when folks talk, you have the ability to resolve issues. Now, while the board is going to make a decision based upon the law, we do like to give opportunity to people to discuss the case. So what I'm going to do is to call the cases for which we have opposition. You don't have to come up, just stand up, and we'll see if conversation outside in the hallway makes sense. First case for which there's opposition signed in is 2019-69, 3314 to 3318 Airedale Avenue. Sir, are you the appellant?
Yes, I'm the appellant.
Okay, and you guys are in opposition? Any, does it make sense for you guys to go outside and talk?
I've tried speaking with.
Well, okay, we're not going to get into a discussion. If there's not a willingness on both sides to discuss, then we'll call the case.
We tried this during the first time I posted.
Yeah, but sir, it's either a yes or no. Do we want to discuss or do we not? And your opposition doesn't want to discuss.
After discussion, will we still be able to move forward?
Yeah, if you want to go out and discuss, you can, but you have to have both sides want to discuss, and what the opposition is telling me they don't want to discuss. So we'll call your case in turn. Next case for opposition is 2019-96, 2300 Whitley Road. Are you the opposition? You're the appellant. Any benefit to be gained by a conversation? No. Nope. Well, I'm batting zero so far. 2019-120, 3715 Yosemite Avenue. Okay. Are you the appellant?
No.
You're the appellant.
Appellant's over here, I think.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't see.
I'll walk over there.
Okay. Do you guys have, is it any benefit if you guys have a conversation to try to resolve your issues? No. Nope. Okay. Again, if both sides don't want to talk, it doesn't work. Finally, 2019-132, 3000 to 3008 Greenmount Avenue.
I think they're out in the lobby now.
They're talking now? Okay. Okay. Next, we're going to call cases for which the board has designated to be on our consent docket. These are cases for which we have reviewed the file and have sufficient information to approve your appeal. I'm going to call a series of cases. As I call your cases, the first person line up here and then sequentially line up to my left. The first case on the consent docket is 2019-111, 3500 Chestnut Avenue. Next case, 2019-119, 1707 Jackson Street. Next case, 2019-134, 5009 Alhambra Avenue. 2019-135, 1704 William Street. 2019-137, 5928 Falls Road. And the last case is 2019-139, 101 to 103 East 21st Street. Councilwoman,
Did you call our case?
which case?
Somebody said, no, I'm sorry, somebody told me, we were out negotiating and we decided to.
No, I called your case as if you wanted to negotiate. You beat me to it.
Oh, okay, we'll get in line and then we'll.
This is consent.
Oh, yeah, I know. We'll come back later. We've agreed to postpone.
Okay.
And when that is timely.
Well, why don't you come in after we've called the consent? Yeah, okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Let's get everybody sworn in.
Raise your right hands, please. Do you swear or affirm the testimony that you're about to give in this hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Great. First case, 2019-111, 3500 Chestnut Avenue. State your name, please.
My name is Andrew Kiphart, and I'm counsel for the appellant, B. More Ty. I've got Nikki and Kevin Stevens here in the audience if you'd like to hear from them.
It-
Andrew
The last name.
Kiphart, Kiphart.
Mr. Kiphart, we have this to add outdoor dining to existing restaurant. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Do we have staff reports?
Martin French for the Baltimore City Planning Department. Planning Department has no comment on this application. Thank
Great.
you.
Mr. Kephart, as zoning board, having reviewed your appeal, we have sufficient information to approve your appeal. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Great. Next case, 2019-119, 1707 Jackson Street. State your name, please.
John Bolster.
And Mr. Bolster, we have this to construct second floor rear addition with rear and rooftop decks. Is that correct?
Correct.
And do we have staff reports?
Planning Department has no comment on this application. Thank you.
And Mr. Bolster, you were issued a posting notice when you had filed this appeal. You're required to submit a copy of that with a signature with an affidavit of posting. Did you ever send that back in?
I signed, the architect sent something to me to sign. I thought
Okay.
that might have been the initial application. He didn't say, he provided me with the sign. I hung the sign, but he didn't.
Gotcha. So for future notice, there's a posting notice that's issued with each appeal. In the bottom of it, there is an affidavit to sign that it's being posted. If we don't receive these within 48 hours of a hearing, we will dismiss the case. So for future cases, just make sure that you return this to us.
You need it for this one.
If you have it, if you don't, we can take your word that the property was properly posted.
I took a picture after I hung it, which shows the date.
That would be great if you can show that.
Want me to show it to you?
Yes, that'd be great. Thank you. So, Mr. Chairman, just for the record, it's case 2019-119. There's a sign posted on the property with the correct date, and it is properly posted.
Okay, great. Mr. Bolster, zoning board, having reviewed your appeal, we have sufficient information to approve your appeal. Thank you very much. Next, 2019-134, 5009 Alhambra Avenue. State your name, please.
David Perez.
And Mr. Perez, we have this to construct second floor, side addition, and new third floor. Is that correct?
That's right.
Great. Any staff reports?
Planning Department has no comment on this application. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Perez, zoning board, having reviewed your appeal, we have sufficient information to approve your appeal. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
2019-135, 1704 William Street. State your name, please.
Adam Carballo.
And Mr. Caballo, we have this to construct two-story rear addition, new third floor, and rooftop deck. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Great. Do we have staff reports?
Planning Department has no comment on this application. Thank you.
Mr. Caballo, zoning board, having reviewed your appeal, we have sufficient information to approve your appeal. Thank you.
Thank you.
2019-137, 5928 Falls Road. State your name, please.
Yeah, Al Barry, B Associates, here on behalf with Emma Snyder, owner of the Ivy Bookstore.
Okay. And Mr. Berry, we have this to use entire premises as bookstore. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And do we have staff reports?
Note a letter of support in the file from the Poplar Hill Association.
Thank you. Planning Department reviewed this application, noted that the majority of this property is in the designated floodway of the Jones Falls, which would not be used for this purpose. Another portion of the property is in the 100-year floodplain of the Jones Falls. For that reason, the Planning Department is recommending that approval of this application be subject to the condition that all construction, alterations, demolition, regrading, and landscaping are completed in accordance with plans approved by the Department of Planning. Thank you.
All right, and Mr. Barry, are those conditions acceptable to the owner?
Yes, they are.
Great. Zoning Board, having reviewed your appeal, we have sufficient information to approve your appeal.
Great.
Thank you very much.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. And finally, on the consent docket, 2019-139, 101 to 103 East 21st Street. State your name, please.
Elliot Jones.
And Mr. Jones, we have this to use first floor for retail sales of garden supplies. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And do we have staff reports?
Yes, Planning Department reviewed this application and is recommending approval of the application. Thank
Great. Mr. Jones, the zoning board, having reviewed your appeal, we have sufficient information to approve your appeal. Thank you very much.
Appreciate that.
Thank you. I believe we have a case that's going to be postponed. 2019-132, 3008 Greenmount Avenue.
Mary Pat Clark, Baltimore City Council. These gentlemen are the applicants and have agreed to postpone so we can meet with the communities involved.
Okay. Mr. Hurdle?
Abraham Hurdle on behalf of the applicant at 3000 to 3008 Greenmount Avenue, Appeal 132. We do consent to the postponement. We look forward to meeting with the community. We would ask to be put on a date, ideally sooner rather than later. I'm not sure what dates are.
We'll do our best given the computer situation in the city.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Maybe excused?
You are. 2019-132 has been postponed. And anybody here for that case, if you sign in, we will give you notice when the case will be reheard.
That'll be great, thank you.
Great, thank you.
Okay.
Okay. 2019-69, 3314 to 3318 Airedale Avenue.
This table?
If you're in opposition, you're on this side. If you're the appellant, you're on this side.
It's up to you.
Okay, let's get everyone who's going to provide testimony sworn in.
Everybody raise your right hands, please. You swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give in this hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Great. And I see we have a number of people on both sides. Once we hear it once, we get it. So we would ask if a witness before you provides testimony, we don't need to have it repeated. But, you know, if anyone wants to talk, we certainly are going to give you the opportunity to speak here today. State your name for the record, please.
Sean Weston.
And Mr. Weston, we have this to use premises as community center with catering. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Do we have staff reports?
Mr. Chair, we do have significant amount of written opposition, so bear with me. We do have a community petition in which there are 60 names signed there. We have a letter from the Vice President of City Council, Sharon Green Middleton. She writes that the location in which the appellant is seeking to open this establishment is in an area that has and continues to be a hotspot that attracts drug dealing, loitering, and the operation of non-registered businesses such as car washing and auto repair. My office receives calls about this particular area on a monthly basis, particularly during the spring and summer months. Additionally, the community neighborhood associations have expressed extreme concern that by approving this request, all positive progress made by the community of active, engaged residents will quickly erode. I have not had the opportunity to meet with Mr. Weston to discuss this plan for use of the property, and my policy has and continues to be that anyone interested in zoning appeals first meet with the residents, neighborhood, and community association leaders to share their plans prior to meeting with me. That is, again, Sharon Green Middleton, City Council Vice President. Have a letter from the chair of the board from WBC Community Development Corporation, Mr. Lawrence Campbell. He writes, the CDC is in agreement with the Forest Park Neighborhood Association, which I'll read in a minute, that the proposed center and social club located at 3314, 3318 Ardell Road. The word on the street is that it will be an adult massage center, and as such, it is not welcome business for the community. Currently, we have illegal drug selling taking place on the street at Ardell and West Forest Park. This street is too small for all that traffic that will be generated by such a social club. There is not adequate street parking. There's not adequate street parking either. This area is 1 block from the elementary school number 64, Liberty Elementary, which is on Main Avenue and around the corner from 4 churches, 2 small storefronts, and 2 large congregations. The WBC Community Development Corporation has been working with the Forest Park Neighborhood Association, to provide for a safe and growing community. We currently are working with Commissioner Michael Braverman to restore houses in the Forest Park communities. The Adult Social Club will bring down the value of the homes in its community and will bring in an element of disparaging persons whom are transients. Please deny this appeal. And the aforementioned Forest Park Neighborhood Association. I'm writing this letter to express my strong opposition to allowing the social club or community center in the Forest Park community. The location of the social club on Ardell Avenue is a hub of criminal activity, murder, and violence. Crime remains a serious challenge in the neighborhood. Our Baltimore City Police are stretched thin as it is. They do not need any more added duties at this time. Progress has been made with the community in rebuilding public safety, cleaner streets, and blight, but we still have a long way to go. We do not want our contributions to be undermined by ill-conceived proposals to keep social clubs serving alcohol in our community. According to the Baltimore City Code, a community center means a facility in which people who live in the neighborhood or community are able to meet and carry out on cultural, social, or recreational activities. And looking at the initial application, it mentions baby showers, retirement parties, birthday parties, catering hall for food events, live music, DJ music, selling foods and drinks such as alcoholic beverages and non-alcoholic beverages. The application does not mention anything about the involvement of the Forest Park community, nor have anyone been in our meeting over a year to tell us about this proposal. The application further states that the building is currently vacant when in fact there is a business in the building along with the tenants that are renting. Parking will also be an issue according to the city code, where there should be a parking for 1 per 10 persons of fire rated capacity. And lastly, we'd like to mention that the criminal background of the owners, we can supply proper documentation if needed. All right. And that's signed by Forest Park Association President Sharon Bradford.
Well, one at a time. We're going to speak one at a time here.
This letter is signed by George Mitchell, President of Neighborhoods United, who are in opposition of this appeal. This location has and continues to be a hotspot that attracts drug dealing, loitering, and operation of non-registered businesses such as a car wash and auto repair located in this building that is listed as vacant. Our concern is that approving this request, the positive progress made by Forest Park Neighborhood Association engaged residents will quickly erode. We at Neighborhoods United are in full agreement. This letter is from the Hanlon Improvement Association, signed by Mr. James Haynes, President. Okay, this letter is written in support of the Forest Park Association's request to deny the establishment of the social club, recreation club, catering facility, etc. The next letter is Northwestern District Community Relations Council, signed by President Sean Stinnett, who is present today as well. Dear Miss Braden, As the president and leading representative of the Northwestern District Community Relations Council, CRC, we are opposing the efforts of a social club opening in the community of Forest Park. Due to the uptick in violent crime, prostitution, and sex trafficking in the Northwestern District, it is not feasible to allow any type of establishment that promotes bad behavior move into the Forest Park community. The Northwestern District has taken the necessary steps towards bringing a level of peace and prosperity throughout the Liberty Wabash communities. However, allowing a business of this nature to open Forest Park would give the community the impression that we have stalled efforts in moving forward towards a positive direction. Therefore, our vote is a no to allow this social club open in the community of Forest Park. And then finally, an email to Mr. Baumgartner from Mr. Fred Mason, located at 3700 West Forest Park Avenue. As a resident of the Forest Park neighborhood, I'm writing in opposition to this application. It is being submitted under false pretenses and should be rejected until the applicant presents a complete and truthful case and to justify whatever enterprise he intends to operate. The content of the application is at complete odds with the plans submitted and with the construction that has been occurring at 3318 Ardell Avenue for several months. By all appearances, what is being constructed is a bar and a restaurant. A large mural has been painted on the side of the building depicting scenes consistent with the bar and not a community center. Based on the number of seats shown in the plan submitted with the initial application, a parking and traffic situation would be created on a narrow street with limited parking. In addition, the 3300 block of Ardell Avenue is already a hotbed of drug activity, and Garrison Boulevard is already a hotbed of prostitution. I'm deeply concerned with that the addition of an establishment that appears to be constructed to serve alcohol and provide entertainment would be an unwelcome addition to an already volatile mix. The residents of Forest Park work steadily and together to maintain our homes, support our schools, and improve our neighborhood. A business that contributes to those efforts is welcome. An establishment created under false pretenses and being constructed in plain sight as something clearly not a quote-unquote community center is not welcome, and the application should be rejected. That's it.
And Mr. Chairman, just to clarify, this application came in as a community center and catering space. Both of those uses are conditional uses before this board, and there will likely be a parking variance that will be required for either one of those uses.
Thank you.
Planning Department reviewed this application. The original application did include a social club, a community center, and food processing light. The applicant has removed the social club from the application. The department notes that certain uses in this code are defined to be inclusive of many specific uses so as to minimize overly detailed lists of uses for the various zoning districts established by the code. These inclusive uses are referred to in this code as generic uses. If a specific use does not fall within the description of a generic use and is not specifically listed in the use table for a zoning district, the specific use is prohibited in that district. If the specific use is listed in any use table, that specific use cannot be interpreted as falling within any generic use. Although the zoning administrator summarized the proposed uses as described in the request, the applicant described the proposed uses as, and we quote here, community center / catering service, close quote, and as, quotes, social events such as baby showers, retirement parties, birthday parties, catering hall for food events, live music, DJ music, sell food and drinks such as alcohol beverages and non-alcohol drinks, etc., end quote. These items suggest that the proposed use could be in part, at least, a restaurant or a tavern, and the floor plans included with the application suggest that the street level would function as either of these, while the upper level would function as a tavern. This interpretation would be reasonable given the fact that this application did not contain any information to substantiate use or description of how food processing light would occur. Restaurant and tavern use is a permitted use in the C2 zoning district where this property is located. However, the same applicant's description could also be interpreted as a request to authorize a banquet hall. In the C2 zoning district, this use is approvable by ordinance only, and the board would have no authority to approve this application if that interpretation would be the board's determination of the nature of the proposed use. With regard to the parking situation, the building covers the entire lot. Therefore, off-street parking facilities would need to be located off-site within 600 feet of the existing structure. The fact that this lot is completely covered suggests the applicant should be prepared to identify off-street parking resources to serve the proposed use. For these reasons, the department recommends deferral of a complete hearing of this application to allow the applicant to provide additional information concerning the precise nature and proposed hours of operation of the various uses mentioned in the application, and to show how these uses would be accommodated within the floor plans provided. Once the exact proposed use of the property is being determined, the applicant should also provide information concerning off-street parking, meeting zoning code requirements that would be provided in support of the use. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Weston, tell us about your project, and I would like you to specifically address the comments made by the planning department.
Wow. First, I want to say good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I'm sitting here listening, and I've been wondering all night what I was going to say to you guys. I'm sitting here listening to some of these comments that was just made. Right, my name's Sean Weston. I'm a father of 10, just retired from the federal government with 2 top secret security clearances. I'm a veteran, also with an honorable discharge. Raised all 5 of my sons and all 5 of my daughters. Just put my 3 sons through college. One in which just came under arrest due to, I guess, I'm starting to find out what's going on here. Since I began this process of trying to open up this community center catering hall, and what you guys just read, I could have easily opened up a restaurant, tavern if I wanted to, but I want to help my community. I want to bring my community in, show them what I've been doing, in which I've invited the neighborhood association to come in several times. I just had an event this weekend, and I sent out flyers. I went to that meeting in which I was invited to, and I went, in which I was shut out, wasn't allowed to ask questions, wasn't allowed to make any comments, and the narrative was still drawn that I'm trying to open up a nightclub. Again, I invited them in. No one still haven't showed up yet. I've spoke with a Pastor Burton several times in which he tried to mediate a conversation between myself and Ms. Braxton, in which he told me I have to speak with her and join her association, in which I, again, told them I don't want to join her association. Ms. Braxton want me to pay her dues and fees. Now, I don't approve into buying access into my own community. Okay? I've been in this community over 25 years helping. Okay? You can check the record. This is one of the safest blocks in Baltimore City. 25 years between 3300 Airedale and 3318 Airedale. There has been no murders that has occurred there. Not one during any business hours. Not one in 25 years I've been there. Check the record. No one has been arrested in that block for selling drugs in years. But again, this is supposed to be a drug-ridden block.
Mr. Weston, I hear you. Can we get you to focus on...
A lot was said, and I'm trying to speak on my behalf. And again, I've contacted Sharon Middleton's office several months ago. I have an email that I sent to her office. Now I'm beginning to see in which my business came under a raid and an investigation. I have no idea where it came from, but now I'm beginning to see where all this police showing up at this business here that I'm building in the middle of the night, trying to gain access, along with fire marshals on Sundays, different hours of the day, police constantly harassing this place here.
Again,
And
I would
again,
suggest, well, hold on one second.
but
What
a
I'd
lot of
like you to
letters-
do is to focus on the activity that you're going to
Okay,
conduct in the building, because that's
Okay,
what
the
we're here,
activity I'm
that's what
going
we're
to
here about
conduct in-
today.
Okay, it's going to be a catering hall, community center, in which Ms. Nay has a mission statement that we sent out with flyers in the whole community for the community to come up and do a tour and taste event that we had on Sunday, in which we put a flyer in Ms. Braxton's mailbox. And this is the mission
It's 89 signatures on here.
With 89 signatures, we also collected 89 signatures of people that attained it.
It's only one person can speak at a time, and I don't have your name yet, so I need to,
Okay, now I'm gonna let her speak.
I need her name, sir.
My name is Danae Charles, Denay. Last name Charles. Okay, so the mission statement and the goal for the Stone Pit Community Center Catering Hall. The goal for the Stone Pit Community Center Catering Hall is to provide a safe haven for the residents of the neighborhood to discuss and informs and address issues that plague the Garrison Forest Park community. The center will also provide various media platforms to keep these important topics at the forefront of our concerns. The SPCC is an upscale venue that will be that will have reservation options for private events, meetings, and other various youth-based educational workshops. In addition to our inner social community, the Garrison Forest Park neighborhood, a catering hall will be on site for the purpose of nutritional instruction coinciding with introducing the community to a better quality of food, okay? The purpose of the center is to uplift and direct the community in a positive direction. The SPCC will also have a membership for all of the interests that we will have there for the customers to obtain. The membership will include discounts for various services offered from the community center. At the end of the day, we are all out here trying to be positive and bring the youth into the community and do something great. It's a lot going on in Baltimore City, and we can do better, and it takes for somebody to do better. And we can't be, as one community, divided, trying to do better.
Okay. Mr. Watson, Mr. French listed a number of activities that were attributed to you in terms of what you wanted to do here. Would you address those, please?
Any of those attributed to me, what activities were attributed to myself?
French, would you repeat those, please?
Yeah, from the application that was given, the statements included social events such as baby showers, retirement parties, birthday parties, catering hall for food events, live music, DJ music,
Yes.
sell food and drinks such as alcohol beverages and non-alcohol drinks, etc.
Yes, that's what we plan to do
Okay,
there.
yeah, okay, just wanna
Exactly,
be
but
clear.
we also plan to provide a platform for some of the younger guys out there, in which myself have done it already. About 20 years ago, I built a recording studio in which I tried to bring some of the guys in off the corner to give them a platform where as though they can express their art and just to give them something positive to grow off of. I don't sell drugs. Everyone in the community know I do not sell drugs, and I don't want people around me that sell drugs because I like the things I have. Now, again, I have some other people that's from the community that would like to speak. They can let you know who I am and exactly what we're doing in this establishment. Now, I've had 2 friends that have passed, one from ALS, and another one of my friends, he passed from a suicide, in which I have had 2 repasses there. I've had 2 repasses in which I allowed family members and friends come in and gather to mourn. We had no trouble there, and then they went on about their business. But beyond that, I'm not conducting business in there, I'm just constructing this place. And again, I invited everyone in to see it.
Excuse me, may I ask, at this time, what are your hours of operation and how many days a week? What are your proposed hours of operation and days of the week that you would be?
Well, it would be catered. It would be mostly far as events catered, but far as the community, what we plan to do is have the community come in at least once or twice a month, in which I've purchased podcast equipment, in which we want to stream meetings from there, in which if you can't get up there, because there's a lot of elderly folks in our community, and we also plan to have workshops in which we plan to teach elderly folks how to become computer literate. Also, if anyone want to have a podcast show from there and address any issues in the community, we will give them that platform.
I understand that, but that's not actually
But we will
answering my
operate
question.
from hours, probably from maybe 8 if we plan to serve catering food throughout the day, maybe from 8 in the morning to maybe 10 at night. As far as Monday through Friday and any catering events, we plan to just abide by city ordinance. Whatever the ordinance call for that establishment to close, that's the time we plan to close.
So how many employees do you anticipate having in this?
Now, we plan to employ at least 10 to 15 people in the neighborhood, and that's another positive, that we plan to give people jobs in the community.
Okay, one of the issues before us is a variance for parking, and there's a requirement of parking. If you have, there's a requirement of. Let's see if I can
Yes,
find it.
actually, if you look on, I believe one of the council members had a diagram, a blown-up drive. If you look right across the street from there, there's a large parking lot that someone owned that they've given us the permission to use it. Actually,
Do you have a lease?
Actually, no, we want to purchase it, but the owner said, no, you can use it. Just do what you want to do with it, just keep it clean.
Do you have that in writing?
I will get that in writing if you guys need that in writing.
Is this the diagram you're referring to, sir?
It's across the street. This parking lot right here. It's a large parking lot that we plan to clean everything off, remove this trailer, we're gonna blacktop it, where those people will have adequate parking. And if you allow me to put a gate up, I'm gate it. I've been doing all this with my own funding.
Let me
My
ask you a
own
question.
funding.
Are you presently operating a business out of that premises?
No, I'm not. I'm constructing. It's under construction. It's under construction, but during the daytime, Mondays and Tuesdays, I allow my friend here to come in and broadcast a podcast show from there, from the space. It's no business nothing being sold, anything. I allow him to come in and broadcast his podcast show. It's something that's positive, keeping him on the straight and narrow and giving him opportunity to show his talent.
Are there any existing use and occupancy permits for that building?
Yes, there is. I applied for a use and occupancy permit several months ago. It's for some reason it's been held up. My inspection's been held up.
So you don't have a present use and occupancy permit?
No, I'm waiting for one. I applied for the application. No, that's why I'm not conducting any business there, other than, like I said, it's a space, we constructing, we operating as far as building. I applied for my permits to do the construction. That's it.
Okay. Let's hear from your other witnesses.
How you doing? I'm Floyd English. I met Mr. Weston about when I was like 13 years old. And the difference between Mr. Weston and this Forest Park community, I'm not familiar with none of these people. My grandmother owned the house 3810 Chatham Road for 40 years and 3905, and how people been around there. The Garrison, they had block parties the Saturday before, and he had the tasting and come and see the place. None of these people showed up when they had things in the community. We don't know these people. So this the first person that come out the blue and say, I'm gonna build something where y'all can have y'all podcasters in here and y'all can have event as long as no trouble around. I've been in that area for a while. Now, it's not the most perfect place. It's Baltimore City. It's the end of Baltimore City. Things happen, but for the last few years, you know, we've been keeping the community clean, and it's been very positive. My problem is that we went to their meeting to come to show respect. Real News was there, and to show them honor. It's a lot of older people. We say, hey, we from the community. Maybe it's a misunderstanding. Now, when you block somebody out something, that means you're going to do better. They don't provide, these people provide snowballs for the kids because the recreation's closed at a certain time. It's hot. Everybody's not, that community is not the most high class community, so everybody don't have air conditioning. So when you hot, you don't have nowhere to go, and the rec is shut down because of summer school. Here go the community center where you can get on the computers. the Forest Park community doesn't provide that. They have a big, fancy senior citizen building, and I'm quite sure that the kids that's under 18 years old don't have that going on. This man is willing to purchase basketball courts and put on that lot that's been vacant all my life. It's nothing been on that lot all my life. So it's like activities. They brought the moon bouncers out 2 weeks straight, and the people that represent our community and supposed to be the liaison for us, they don't even come. And nevertheless, they don't have nothing. But if you look at Waylands, that church is beautiful. If you look at their community center, that's beautiful. These people that's striking against this, they never around. And I met Mr. West when I was 13 years old. To prevent from riding dirt bikes on the street, he purchased jet skis for all of us that was younger at the time, and took us almost every weekend to Sandy Point Park. That stopped me from being in the juvenile building, stopped me from getting arrested because I had something to do. And on top of that, my mother and father used drugs. They was getting high. The man gave us discounts on clothes. 25 years ago when he came in the community, he always been access to the community. He always helped it. I thought he is the Forest Park community, because the people that say they represent him and at the seat doesn't do nothing for the community. And if they did do something with the community, we can all get together because it's our community. None of you guys live in the community, so it would make sense that the village stick together and make the village stronger. But they say it's drug activity. Nobody's been murdered on that block in 25 years. People not getting their houses broken, people cars are not getting taken, nobody's getting mugged when they come down the street. So I'm just saying, y'all don't know me, I don't know y'all. I wish that we can all work together. And then some of these people that be top are not even born in Baltimore, nevertheless from the Libby Heights and Garrison community. And then when they said something about a bar, it's a Chinese store, a Chinese man that owned a bar, that when I wanted to rebel against my parents, I can go to that bar on Forest Park in Oakville and purchase liquor when I was under 18. But they don't have a problem. They right there, and they don't do nothing for the community. They don't. If you go there and say, here's a flyer to the community, can y'all donate waters? They don't do nothing for the community. Every business in that area is owned by Asians and Arabics. There's one braiding shop owned by Africans, and everything else is outside the churches. And the churches, they are just blind to the community. They pays no attention to the community. They could care less as long as they secure on Sundays. So when you got this man in here and we fighting for something, Baltimore's hot. The murder rate is up high. If you have somewhere where these kids and some of these adults that still young-minded can go and relax and have a good day and eat a food that's not a Chinese food, that's not bad for you, why not? So I'm just saying, that's everybody understand that. You see it on the news every day. We watch it on the news every day. How do Baltimore get better? The community deal with the councilmen. The police department deal with each other to make it a better Baltimore.
We hear you. I'm not trying to cut you off, but we do have a lot of people here today. Thank you.
My name is Anthony Davis. I've known Mr. Weston since he was 10 years old. His older brother was my best friend. Unfortunately, he was killed when he was 16. We stayed really tight since then. He had a strong family structure. We grew up at the Howland Ridge projects, where not many families had a mother and father. He fortunately did. I'm kind of choked up about what he was saying, because Baltimore is my city, and we have issues in our community. And it looks like you guys want the right thing for the community. These guys want the right thing for the community. It seems like if we get together and talk about what's right for the community, because I know Sean, I know what he's doing. I am on the board of directors for the There Goes My Hero Foundation. We save lives with bone marrow, whatever. I came to Sean because African American community is 25% under represented when it comes to bone marrow donations. And that's my role in the organization, is to help color the registry. I came to Sean, and he's so excited about the opportunity because whenever there's a need and he has the ability to help that need in the community, he wants to do it. And that's why I'm proud of him. He does a lot for the community. He's not a drug dealer. I don't know where this information came about him being a drug dealer. He don't want drugs anywhere near him. But he's a good man. He only want what's good for the community. And as you can see what the young gentleman right here said, he echoes the folks in that community that these folks do not want to see progress. So if we want this community to progress, this is a vehicle to help this community progress. And it could probably progress even better if the two sides can get together and figure this thing out. Because if both sides want what's best for the community, why not have the discussion? Right? That's all I'm saying.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chairperson, gentlemen,
Good afternoon.
ladies. My name is Lawrence Roebuck. I've known Sean for Roebuck, R-O-E-B-U-C-K. I've known Sean Weston for 25, 30 years. Solid, straightforward person. I have a film production company in LA. I have an entertainment company. He spoke about building a recording studio 20 years ago. I was a partner in that. All of the young gentlemen that wanted to rap, that had any form of music or any form of entertainment in their bones, was welcome to the studio. A few of the gentlemen that came in, they're currently signed to major record labels because of Mr. Weston. They're currently signed to major record labels. We still have gentlemen in that community that are still looking for this outlet with this music. And again, I have an entertainment company and I have a film production company. And I'm piggybacking off of Mr. Weston, and what we've done 20 years ago, I still do today. I can name artists that I've managed, that I work with. You guys all know. Film production companies, Warner Brothers I work for, Universal, Def Jam, I could go on and on and on. My record is impeccable when it comes to film and music. I speak on behalf of Mr. Weston because this is a man that loves his community, has been doing nothing but positive for his community. Now, I've stood here and I listened to drugs, all of this illegal activity that is going on in that community. What community is that not going on in the city of Baltimore? When I look at TV, I see this on the news every day. But like this gentleman said, where he's located, none of that is happening. You guys mean 2 blocks down,
Sir, why don't you
around the corner.
talk to us?
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
You guys mean 2 blocks down and around the corner. That's what these guys are talking about. It's not where Mr. Weston is building this community at. This community is for the community and for people to come out to get to know each other. And like the gentleman said, and I've been in that community for over 25 years. And I'm 55 years old. I've never met any of these people that are in opposition to what Mr. Weston is trying to do for the community. And I'm totally taken aback as to the fact that they don't want to communicate with him because he's a very straightforward person that can be talked to. He's going to come to some type of mutual agreement with you. He's not the type that's going to put up a stone wall and say, I don't want to talk about it. Because he's always trying to move forward and he's always trying to progress. And this is why we're here today, because he's trying to move forward and he's trying to progress. But the main thing is he's doing it for his community, doing it for the kids. We've been doing this for a long time. And again, we have gentlemen that has grown up in that community since they was little kids that are in films, that are in music, that can come back. And when he did the podcast, we made calls and spoke to major artists that called in that was, wanting to know, what are you guys doing? We want to be a part of this for the community.
Sir, just as I said, we've got a long line of people.
I
If could
totally
ask you to
understand,
wrap it up.
but I'm just really appalled that there's so much opposition to something that's very positive that Mr. Weston is trying to do. So I really hope that you guys could come to some kind of medium, some kind of form, and really understand that this is something for the community.
All right, thank you.
All right.
How you doing? My name Corey Gardner. Good. All right, I knew Mr. Weston for about last 25 years. My family has owned a house on a 4200 block of Bonner Road for the last probably about 28 years in the community. Mr. Weston has definitely always helped the community out, helped the young guys around the community to better themselves, lead them in the right direction. They're doing the positive thing, actually working, like he said, he worked for the federal government for years. Showing us the right way to do things instead of going to the street way of how the community, of course, been going in that community, but not exactly on that block. I'm not really good at speaking, but I know for sure that all the negative things that they're saying about what's going on in the block and about Mr. Weston, it's not true. If you can do your research, like he said, there's no crime really going on in that block right there. There's no streets, no gun violence going on that block. It seems like they don't want to let nobody come in and help the community if they're not with them, and that's not the right thing to do. Like if you, like they said, they didn't even want to go outside and talk. Why you ain't trying to talk to a man that is trying to help out the community? And I don't even get that. First part of trying to resolve something is communicating with people. When you can't communicate, you can't get nothing resolved. But they're not trying to let them do that. And I mean, me personally, I'm not a big talker myself. I really don't know how to talk in front of people for real. But all I'm saying is, just get a man an opportunity to try to do something better for our community, do something better for the whole community, as not just our, just so he can branch off and do other community, because it only starts somewhere to get to other places. Like I was saying, I really don't know how to talk too well.
All right, thank you very much.
You represent yourself very well, young man.
Hello, how you doing? My name is John Camphor. I've been with John Camphor, yes. Sean, I've been knowing Sean, Camphor. I've been knowing Sean for 40 years. We grew up together in Somerset Projects, where we had to make things work, make things happen, good families, so forth and so on, our upbringing, private schools, so forth and so on. We was a little fortunate than other people, but again, he's always a people person, always helped out. I've been with him for years. I coach basketball. I do a lot of stuff for community too. He always called me when he wants something to be done. I do snowballs. I do basketball programs for him. I do functions for him. So anytime he calls me, he asks me, I'll come, hands down, with no question, because I know it's positive. If you don't let someone do stuff positive for the city and you see the city going down, why would you not let somebody that's doing something right? I'm not going to repeat myself the thing everybody said, because everybody know him. But if you get to know him personally, he's a great guy. He's a great man. He have 10 kids that he take care of. Very fortunate. Very fortunate. So I'm not going to say too much because everybody going to say the same thing I said. But think about it. Just talk to him. That's all you have to do.
All right, thank you.
My name is John Ingram, and I've been knowing Sean also for over 25 years. I do a lot of work in my community. I do landscaping, and most of the young guys in the community, I give them work from time to time, helping me to help my neighbors in the community. He has also hired me to clean the neighborhood up. The lot in which we were speaking about, you know, he hired me to clean that lot up for the event that he was giving for the community, you know, so that they could come in and talk to us and find out, you know, what we were trying to do. But all I've heard since I've been in here is a lot of negative lies portrayed by these folks here, because he has never been arrested for anything. In that block in which they're speaking about, there has been no murders going on. There has been nobody afraid to walk up and down that block, because it's not that type of atmosphere. It just seems that when someone reaches out to try to lift the community up, there's always folks that come up out of the woodwork and they want to pull you down if you're not kicking money their way or it's not benefiting their program. And that's what I heard here.
Okay.
You know.
Thank you very much. Mr. Weston, is there anything else? I'd like to hear from your opposition next.
Just one thing I would like to say also. This block isn't the most perfect block. I'll be the first to say there is some kids that be around selling drugs and stuff, just like on almost any block in Baltimore City. I try my best to talk to them. I try my best to coach them off the corner and give them opportunity by opening up my doors. Now, again, there has been a few guys shot in that area. Yes, there has been. But again, you check the record. No one's been murdered in that block in 25 years, other than a kid named Lee. After the hours of the businesses, we all knew Lee. Everyone in the community knew Lee. It happened around 11 to 12 o'clock at night. It wouldn't have happened if the stores was open. It wouldn't have happened to him.
Mr. Watson, I'm going to give you the opportunity once the opposition finishes to sum up. So it sounds like you're sort of summing up here. So let's hear from your opposition.
I'm just trying to make
I hear what you're
some
saying.
things clear, because I don't want to have no misunderstanding
Listen,
that
you'll
we're
have the
trying to
opportunity
paint this
to
perfect picture.
close.
Okay, it's not a perfect picture up there. That's why I'm trying to fix it.
Let's hear from your opposition.
Hi, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Alonzo Lamont, Alonzo Lamont. Sometimes that comes out differently for people. First thing, I'd like to thank you for your service, Mr. Weston. It is, and also for some of the challenges you seem to have overcome in your lifetime and in helping others. I don't know you, we don't know each other. My concern is basically with that area, and I am a former president of the Callaway Garrison Improvement Association, which is right across Liberty Heights, same area. We go up to Garrison Boulevard. And I can say one of the biggest struggles we have in that area is we are trying to improve that area so that people can live in their homes, so that we have less crimes, so it looks more beautiful, so that the way of life that we want to have is it's good for everybody. We have a lot of challenges in that direction. It's a hard time for stores to come into that area. We don't have restaurants in that area. We're looking for things to go up. And I'm not going to take a lot of time in speaking, but I know that when we hear something that sounds, an application that sounds, well, it was a social club, and now it's going to be this, and this, and this, and this, and it feels as if the application's kind of a catch-22, is trying to push all these different buttons. And no, that area does not. Callaway Garrison and the other surrounding areas, we do not have a lot of murders in general. We have all those other kind of nuisance crimes. We have car break-ins, people kind of attacked on the street, robbed, et cetera, et cetera. But the struggle for us is really in keeping and maintaining that area and having it turn into something that works in a positive way as a commercial district. And we are working with the city with the Links program in terms of trying to beautify Liberty Heights from Mondawmin all the way up to Garrison and beyond, because the city recognizes you drive through there and you see, well, this is kind of a mess right here. So I'm not here to attack anybody on that side. I don't really know anybody on that side. I'm just saying my concern is really for the area and for the neighborhood, and I'm opposed to it because it sounds like it could be a lot of things, but it kind of maybe doesn't have, as they say, doesn't have the element that people are saying, but it sounds like something that could easily invite the element. And by the element, I do mean the drugs and shootings, et cetera, et cetera. So that's why it doesn't work for me.
Okay, thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Valerie Pulley McKee. My family has, I'm sorry, the name is Valerie Pulley McKee.
How do you spell
Pulley-MCKEE.
Ma'am, you can pull that mic down a little bit.
Okay.
There you go.
I drove through the area. Am I echoing? I'm echoing to myself. I drove through the area this weekend that just passed, and they had an event going on. I did not see anything that was violent going on, but the decibel level was too high. The decibel level was carrying around the corner at least 2 additional blocks from where they were actually having their event. I was offered the opportunity to park on the parking lot, to go inside. The gentleman that responded was very polite. I have a problem with this. We do not need loud events in that area. Airedale or Ardale is a side street. Most of the houses on Ardale are near that 3300 block are sides of people's homes. Now, no one is really going to be able to see that side street because it is such a dark street. And if something goes on, and that's not to say that you guys would commit any crime, if something were to go on that side street, there is no one who is really going to see it. That's the reason why I'm in opposition to that kind of establishment. I'm keeping in mind, and I have to say this to you, I have more than 60 years of life and experience in that area. When I was a child, I went to Ida's Beauty Salon. Ida's Beauty Salon was shut down and closed because she closed it, because there was too much drug activity in that area. I also have to say on Liberty Heights and Garrison Boulevard, which is just one block down from where they want to have their establishment, there was a bar that was called Jim Parker's Bar that was infested with drug activity, and the community associations had to shut it down. We don't want to see anything that would possibly innocently invite more bad behavior that we have a difficult time getting rid of. As it was said in Mr. Mitchell's letter, the police department don't have the staffing ability to curtail the behaviors that are already present, that would only be exacerbated by knowing that they can blend in with a, quote, legitimate organization. And how would you identify them? How would you do it without being discriminatory and possibly getting some innocent people? So that concludes what I have to say.
All right, thank you.
My name is Fred Jackson. I'm part of Forest Park Community Association, and I don't want to speak on anything I don't know. I don't know about drug dealers and whatever else anybody else was talking about. What I do know is on three different occasions and having to deal with this group. I can't speak on exactly who. We only had to deal with Mr. Weston twice. The first person came in was someone from their group that came into our community association, which he claims he don't know anything about, but they came in and they said they wanted to open up a barbecue place. The community said, sounds good, we don't have a sit-down restaurant. Right behind that, they changed it to a social club. We said, well, all right, what kind of social club? Then they changed it again to a community and social club, and they wanted to serve alcohol. And as she spoke on Jim Parker, since he left, we haven't had alcohol in that block or in that area. And Jim Parker, as nice a man as he was, he gave a lot of money to schools and activities and all type of things around there. The alcohol fueled a lot of stuff. We just don't want back up there. Now, we invited Mr. Weston to come to our meeting in April. When he contacted our president, she said, you can come in April and present your whole plan to us. He decided to come before, the month before. She said, well, you can come in there, but we have time set aside for you to speak at this next meeting. He said, well, I'm coming in there and I'm bringing my whole family. He said, y'all better have enough chairs. That was the statement he made. So when they got there, oh, before that, we did come here for the first hearing, and I don't know which one of you suggested that we go speak in the hall, and we stepped out in the hall to speak. Before we could say anything, the only thing Mr. Weston wanted us to know was that he had 10 kids, 2 Bentleys, and a house in Woodlawn, and 2 clearances. Never told us, what are you building? He never said it. He just pontificated about how much money he had and all this. When he came to our meeting, he came in there, they started asking a lot of questions about what we were doing. He had never heard of us. Who ever heard of a community association? Well, anybody that dials 311 can find out where every community association in this city is. Now, whether he wanted to do that or not, that's up to him. He's a free man. But he says he didn't know we existed, even though that community association has existed for over 50 years in that area. When he came in there, we still wanted to know the same thing. What are you building? He never presented one thing. What they did do was come in a large group and terrified the members of the community association, who are anywhere from age 60 to 90. As a matter of fact, we were honoring 3 people who were 90 years old that we were giving awards to. They sat in the corner yelling back and forth. The people there, older people, get terrified by that type of activity. They were terrified, which is why you don't see them here right now. We left out, they still talking the same thing about, I got this much money, we got this many cars. And the statement was made, well, look, you don't live here. You got a business here, but you don't live here. He said because he earned enough money, and I say, quote, to escape Baltimore City. That's not somebody that's vested. If you feel that you've escaped Baltimore City with your money, then you're not vested in our community.
Sir, I don't want to say the same thing to you I said to them. Let's focus on the project
Okay, and
here.
still comes down to the same thing. I find them to be disingenuous because they never did tell us, what are you building? We've had at least 4 different things come out. This last one, he said it's going to be a community center, where he took the alcohol part off of what he was going to do. But everything that he has said about what he's building, none of it sounds the same. Some of the things I've heard here today is the first time I've heard them. I'm only going by what I heard, which was, I want this club, I want this other thing, I want this, and it was supposed to be a social club, and then it's supposed to be baby showers and all this, and this is what he was saying. He's not lying when he said that. As far as him being a drug dealer, I have no knowledge of him being a drug dealer. That's not the issue. The issue is, what are you building? And it keeps changing and changing and changing. One lady that was with him said that she was going to be teaching kids how to cook. Doesn't sound bad. She was a caterer. And she was the only one of them that spoke to this big group of senior citizens telling what they were going to do. But the rest of them, they terrified those people so badly, they were like, is this what we're going to have if you get in there? And that's what the problem is. I think that they're disingenuous with what they're saying, that if they get a foot in there, it's going to become whatever he decided to do that morning.
Thank you very much.
And that's all I have to say about it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, panel. Excuse me. My name is Sean Stinnett, Stinnett, Sean, Sean. I'm the president of the Northwestern District Community Relations Council. I'm in support as far as when it comes to as far as the community. The community of Forest Park falls within the Northwestern District, the police district. And I know that, I don't know exactly what statistics as far as with the folks that are applying for this application or zoning application. However, I can say that as far as within this particular area, just several months ago, Mayor Catherine Pugh had a violence reduction initiative walk around that area because of the drug activity, because of the loitering, because of just all the negative activity as far as coming through a number of the businesses around that area. Also, the BP gas station that's in that area has been on a padlock for 1 year because of the activity. So those type of activities that are happening in that specific area has the concerns of the individuals that lives within Forest Park. There's a lot of residents that come to the CRC meetings that are very afraid and are very concerned.
Yes, sir. Let's focus on this project.
Okay. All in all, there's concerns as far as particularly the type of activity and the type of traffic that will be coming to this particular establishment, and that's the concerns. They see it as far as within other businesses around that particular area, so they see a concern as far as this particular, because of what the previous gentleman had said, because of I guess the application has been changing as far as what type of business could be coming into, and that's mainly the concern as far as the stuff that's been coming in that particular area. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, ma'am.
My name is Rhonda Wimbish. I am a real estate broker. I have 2 real estate companies. I am a community advocate, and I have lived in Northwest Baltimore all my life. I'm 57 years old, selling real estate for 30 years, and the demise of our community is palpable. And that particular block on Airedale, I don't know about why they're saying nobody was killed there. I'll call them teddy bear memorials. They're always on that corner. I could not believe, I've called Councilwoman Sharon Middleton's office and said, why are they always teddy bear memorials? I don't see this killing in the paper. But this is the block. This is important.
I just want you to focus on the
This
project.
is the project,
Okay.
because this has to do with the ownership of that building. There are ways to get around rental laws, and the city council has been improving those laws. And one way is to rent rooms. There are rooms renting at this building at the top of the building. There is activity that I fear as someone who grew up in this area. I get my prescriptions filled at Walgreens. I do not want to ride down that street because it's dark, and I'm afraid, and I shouldn't feel that way because I am a taxpayer. The taxpayers in that community pay some of the highest taxes in this city, from $3,800 to $4,500 is the average in that community. This man, I don't know him, does not live in the community. I live there. They live there. And this has to do with the project, because you're asking for zoning in a community, and the conforming, conditional, and non-conforming use that this board has been given in many of our black communities is an insult, because we're paying the taxes. To say, my taxes, I don't have a conditional opportunity to pay taxes, I have to pay. I don't have a non-conforming use to not pay taxes, I have to pay. And this is what this board does. You give zoning in our black communities on a very disrespectful level. And I'm asking you to look at the people who live in the community, who pay the taxes, and who have to endure the demise. The police department, Northwest Police Department, focuses on Park Heights. There's only 7 to 8 officers on the street every night in Northwest Baltimore City. That means my community doesn't get policed because I'm not in Park Heights. But you're about to turn us into Park Heights, and we don't want to be Park Heights. And lastly, I want to say there's a Liberty Heights corridor assessment. This is not included in it. Everything that's supposed to happen on the Liberty Heights corridor has already been written, and it's in the Baltimore City plans. So you can access that through Baltimore City planning. So this business was not included. It is not needed. It is not necessary. Directly across the street is Liberty Rec Center, which is very positive. The community supports it. The elementary school attached to it is number 5 in the state. There is a positive influence for children there. And I would like for them to go over there and lease some space for Liberty Recreation Center and add to that positivity, because it's directly across the street. That would be positive. Thank you.
Ma'am? All right, let's hold on. We have one person speaking at a time.
I'm Sharon Bradford, and I'm the president of the Forest Park Neighborhood Association. I'm also the vice president of the CRC, and I sit on the Forest Park Alliance. And on behalf of the Forest Park Association, we strongly oppose this social club or community center. We do not want a community center. We are very much so a part of our community. We have engagement, and we also welcome them into our meeting. But I'm not going to take a lot of time. Stop.
Thank you very much. All right, Mr. Weston, I'll give you the opportunity to make some closing remarks.
Yes. What I would like to say is that no one is living upstairs in this building. I own the 3 buildings between 3314 and 3318, in which I started renting a business on that corner of Erndale 3300 block 25 years ago. Now I own 3 buildings up there because I was given the opportunity to open up a business, in which I opened 5 businesses up right there along that strip, in which I never again had any opposition at the time when I opened up these businesses. Garrison Development, Street Official Records, Erndale Variety, the
Again, sir, I
Hadport
would ask you to
Barbershop.
focus on the project at
Again,
why we're here
okay.
today.
Also, when we speak of representation, again, I've been there 25 years now. These buildings are dilapidated on the front, okay? Now, I look up and I see Family Dollar just moved into my community. I had no clue that they were coming. I've been there 25 years running a business. No one never knocked on my door to say, hey, Mr. Weston, Family Dollars is on their way here. But what I've been told by Pastor Burton, that they met with Miss Braxton and they agreed to pay her in the association in order to come in.
Mr. Weston, you're not addressing the project why we're
Okay,
here.
but again, the problem that I'm having is that I'm not receiving any representation from this neighborhood association. That's the reason why I don't want to be a part of them, because I am doing it by myself, up on Airedale, by myself, saving lives, keeping these kids alive, doing whatever I have to do by myself. Now again, I can just open up a restaurant and make my money for myself. No, I don't live in the community, but I have been based there 25 years, and I invested in that community by bringing my money back, purchasing in that area, and showing these kids how it's done the right way. So again, my friends, my business partners at the time did meet with Ms. Braxton, and at the time I was not involved in that negotiation or that meeting. But then I came to that meeting in which I tried to meet with them. No one was aggressive. Everything was recorded. I had my news guys come in to try to record this event. He was blocked out. He was told he couldn't come in. He couldn't do any recording. We were told to pretty much shut up, sat down as Ms. Braxton hovered over top of us to make sure we didn't speak.
One more time, if you want to address
But again,
the use
I'm
here,
sorry.
I would ask you to do that.
But again, this place will be a pillar in the community. It will be a safe haven for anyone that want to come in there and seek sanctuary if anything going on in that community. It's a place where these guys can resolve their issues. I'm inviting my community in.
Let me ask you a question, sir.
Yes.
When do you intend to sell alcohol in this facility?
Well, I plan to do catered events, okay? We as people, we should have a right whenever, if someone want to rent the place, because I'm also a businessman.
Hear me out.
Yes.
The day begins on a Saturday. You're open from 8 a.m. to 10
It would only take place during that catered event is when alcohol would be served. During that catered event. During the daytime when we sell food, no alcohol will be served. I'm not trying to make this into a bar. I don't want that up there. But I do want to be able to have my community come in without having to go out to the Windsor Inn or the Golden Dragon, paying those people their money. We should have a place that we can come and gather in our community if we want to have a retirement party, because we do have a lot of elderly folks. Baby showers, graduation birthday parties, wedding receptions. We should have a place in our community that we can do that, and we don't have that. Again, the rec center, I heard they lost the funding for the sports program. I offered to fund the rec football program. Now, I don't know what the neighborhood association is doing, but I sent Brother John up there several times to tell them I'm willing to help. I'll pay for their uniforms.
Mr. Weston, what percentage of of this location do you view more of a banquet hall versus a community center? Because I've heard the concern, I've heard what your side has said, but tell us we've heard what you want to do, I guess, in theory, but how much of this is a banquet hall versus how much of this will be an actual community center? Well,
actually, far as the it will be catered every weekend. Someone will be offered we have a lot of people in our community. So it will be available every weekend to be catered. Now, we plan to do food, nutritional food in our community from 8 to 10. We'll be doing mostly food, okay? It will be mostly running as a restaurant, okay? But I don't plan to have people to walk in. You have to call in your order, because I don't want people hanging and loitering around. I want to do it a little different. You call your order in, you send it in email, text, we have it prepared. Yes, you can come in, pick it up, you can eat there, but after you finish eating, you can leave. That's it. I'm a businessman also. I plan, I do plan to run a business.
Have you considered operating your venture without a liquor license?
Well, we like to come together and drink too. What, we can't drink as people? Black folks can't drink?
Question, sir. It's just a question.
Sure, but why should I have to give up that option?
Okay.
No one else give it up. Why should I have to give it up? You can go right down the street, purchase liquor at the Korean store in Edgewood. You can go right up on Chelsea at the Korean store and purchase liquor.
No, it's Oakfield.
Oakfield? Yes, you can go several places in our community and purchase liquor if you want to buy liquor at any time.
Okay. Any questions from the board? Thank you all very much.
You're welcome.
Yeah, let it clear out for a second. All right, next case is 2019-96, 2300 Whitley Road.
Actually, can you call it again, Chair? The button didn't work.
Sure. It is 20-19, 2019-96, 2300 Whitley Road.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, let's get everybody sworn in who's going to provide testimony.
Raise your right hands, please. Do you swear or affirm the testimony that you're about to give in this hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Good. Would you state your name for the record, please?
Nate Prettle, AB Associates.
Mr. Prado, we have this to construct new screened-in rear porch with rear deck. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And do we have staff reports?
Planning Department has no comment on this application. Thank you.
And we have about 12 letters from the surrounding neighbors in support of the project. They essentially all say something similar, that that other properties have similar decks, and that they support this proposed deck.
Okay. Mr. Prado?
Great. Good afternoon. Nate Prettle, AB Associates, here on behalf of Alan and Peggy Lazaro, who are the property owners and residents at 2300 Whitley Road. What we have here, as described, is a proposal to build a modest first floor open deck as well as a screened-in porch into what zoning considers the rear yard of this property. And I'll go over quickly before I turn to Mr. and Mrs. Lazaro why this is a textbook example of both the state and city giving the authority to this board to grant certain variances. And those variances are based on the uniqueness of the property, which I'll go ahead and describe in detail. This is, the property is located in what's known as the Park at Mount Washington. This is a subdivision that crosses the city-county line. About a third of it is in the city, 2/3 of it are in Baltimore County, in northwest Baltimore City. It was developed in the mid-2000s. When it was planned, it was a Beazer Homes development that granted property owners any number of certain options, one of which being decks and porches, totally in character with what's being proposed here. The particular property is at the corner of Whitley Road and Pebblebrook, and that at the time the front door is essentially located on Whitley Road. However, the Pebblebrook side could also be considered the front yard, and this creates a situation where the rear yard, which we're requesting the variance through, which is a 30-foot rear yard setback, essentially functions as the side yard for the opposition, and you'll hear from their side in a minute, and that's important to get into the variances. The variance being requested is minimal in consideration with what's required, and in fact, if this were the side yard, as it is for the adjacent neighbors, this would not be required a variance at all. Administratively, if the property owners wanted to, they could go to property location, zoning administration, and have their address changed to Pebblebrook, and this hearing wouldn't even be required at all. To get into the specifics of what the actual proposal is, the one-story rear deck would have no greater impact than if the property owners decided to put pavers, whether pervious, impervious pavers, as a sitting area outside. And that wouldn't require a variance either. And I'll show some pictures. I'll let Mr. Lazaro get into a little more detail, but I'll pass this around. This is the,
There should be 5 or 6 copies.
if you could turn to picture 2 on that, shows where when the house was built, it was already created with a door opening for a proposed rear deck, as these things were options when the subdivision was planned. So this is something that was anticipated. And furthermore, this is completely within character of almost every house within the park at Mount Washington. Mr. Lazaro, how many houses within the park, whether it's in the city or the county, have similar rear decks or screened-in porches?
I didn't count exactly. There's, I believe, 300 or so homes, and I would estimate that at least 2/3 have a deck.
So we have 2/3, and this was, planned when this development was created. Al Berry, who's the principal of AB Associates, was hired on behalf of Beazer Homes about 15 years ago when there was discussion with the city as well as the community and the planning department whether to go ahead and just have all of these decks and porches approved as part of the greater subdivision and master plan. Ultimately, because of sequencing of development and permits and how long zoning approval would last, it was decided to just handle these on a case-by-case basis. And we're here. You have in your file, and I'll just hand another copy, a picture of the site plan, which shows the uniqueness of the irregular lot, which is leading to the variance. There's a very sharp dog leg along Whitley Road that allows the other lots on Whitley to maintain their form. And again, that speaks to the nature of this, whether or not this is a side yard or a rear yard. And the greater point is that the impact to the adjacent property owner comes on his side yard, not on the rear yard. So this essentially functions as a side yard addition in which this would meet all of the requirements for a side yard. And so I'll leave it at that for the moment. I'll let Mr. and Mrs. Lazaro talk a little bit about why they want this addition before coming back to some of the specifics.
Good afternoon. My name is Alan Lazaro. I'm here with my wife, Peggy Lazaro. We are obviously city residents, and we've been city residents since we were married almost 14 years ago. I know you have the pictures, and I know Mr. Baumgartner referenced 12 letters in support. There are actually 14 in support, 2 of which were sent when I understand there was an email situation. Maybe I'll just
Putting it kindly.
Sorry. Putting it. I'll hand one up. This is a complete set of the 14 letters that were sent in support. Now, ever since we had the large zoning signs that were put up any number of weeks ago, I've had a number of passersby, not just my friends and neighbors, come up and say, "What's this massive project you must be building, given the size of these signs?" And I said, notwithstanding the size of these signs, really all we're trying to do here is a simple deck and screened-in porch project. And I just want to make a couple practical points about our project. Having a deck that we can use and enjoy was intended when our house was built. Beazer Homes built our house, as you can see in picture 2, with a screened-in, with a sliding door with a temporary gate. This may sound silly, but I would submit that Beazer Homes did not intend that I could simply unscrew the 4 screws that are holding up the temporary gate, open the sliding door, walk out, and drop 9 feet. Obviously, there was a deck that was intended. We know that not only because of the sliding door, but also this was offered as an option consistent with the sliding door when our house was built and all of the houses in our neighborhood were built. Our project is consistent with decks that have been built in our neighborhood. And again, I would refer the board to the 14 letters in support which evidence that. We're here really just asking for approval to do the thing that's been done. I don't know if it's 100, it's probably hundreds of times in our neighborhood. We just want to build a deck and a screened-in porch that we can enjoy. It's a deck, it's a project that was both intended when our house was built, and it's consistent with the decks in our community. Again, I would ask the board to review the letters and pictures in support. I'm going to say I'll save the rest of my comments for rebuttal, other than to note for the record that Councilman Schleifer regrets that he can't be here today. He's on some out-of-state business, but he did ask me to read into the record for the board that Councilman Schleifer came out to look at the yard and what other neighbors' decks look like, and he agreed that there's no reason that we shouldn't be able to build. I would just read that into the record and represent that was a message that Councilman Schleifer sent to me just before the hearing, and I'll save the rest of my comments for rebuttal.
Thank you.
Just very, very quickly before we'll get to the neighbors, that this is a unique property based on my prior testimony. The hardship required is not based on the applicant's own doing. It's based on the irregularity and the uniqueness of the lot, both the way that it's situated on 2 lot lines as well as the orientation of the house on the lot. And just in terms of the required findings, the request is not to increase the property value. It's to allow the enjoyment of the owners who wish to stay in Baltimore City. The variance is not injurious to the use and enjoyment of other properties you may hear otherwise. However, as I previously stated, this is in character not only with the development, but within the side yard requirements for an R1E zoning district. So the variance would be in harmony with the purpose of the zoning code. There are no urban renewal plans. It's completely within harmony with the city's master plan. It's not in a historical or architectural preservation district. And finally, the variance will not otherwise be detrimental to public health or interest.
Okay, thank you.
David Flom, F-L-A-M-M. So first, sorry that this case wasn't exactly as exciting as the prior case. We live right across the street from Alan and Peggy. I would venture to say that probably 90% of homes have some sort of deck or patio to enjoy outdoor living. What they're building is very much like all the letters said, nothing crazy. It's a deck with a screened-in porch. And again, Alan and Peggy, although they are party animals, but they're not these crazy. I really see no reason why they shouldn't be able to do what they're doing.
Okay, thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. Jason Rubenstein, R-U-B-E-N-S-T-E-I-N, here to support Mr. and Mrs. Lazaro. Not only do I find them to be excellent people, excellent neighbors, excellent characters, he's also my son's baseball coach. They give back to society. I'm also a very active realtor in the area. And I would reference 2304 Craybury Road, which I'm happy to pull up pictures if you would like me to on my phone, which I put on the market Friday, sold it last night, which is, I believe, to be the exact same situation we're dealing with: a screened-in porch, a deck, stairs going down, which Mr. and Mrs. Lazaro have, as well, backing up to another residence right behind them. So once again, there is no reason that I can see that this would not be approved, and no reason for the neighborhood not for this to be approved. So I appreciate your support. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Bao Vo, and I'm a direct, B-A-O, B as in boy, A as in apple, O as in Oscar, V as in Victor, O as in Oscar. Bao Vo. B-O. That's correct, yes. Oh, I used to be in the military, sorry. Okay, so I'm a direct neighbor of Alan. He's a very successful attorney, and his wife is a doctor. I also happen to be a doctor, so as a doctor I understand that people are motivated by fear and desire, and this probably should have never come before you. I understand they may have some issues. I know them very well. They're all my neighbors and friends. He's a very good grill master, and I would like him, the smells, they're very inviting, so if he could please have a deck behind his house.
I'm not sure that's in the zoning code, but we hear you.
Okay, and we all know each other. I lend my lawnmower, my snowblower to Mr. Prizer. We're friends. Okay, so I just want to say that what I have to say is very similar to what everyone else has said, and it's people have these decks, and I also understand that they've also agreed to put giant arbor vitae for privacy issues. Okay, well, whatever. But anyway, they're willing to do. They're very amenable and willing to do what it takes to please the opposing party.
Okay, thank you. Okay, let's hear from the opposition.
Good afternoon, everyone. Michael McCann, M-C-C-A-N-N, on behalf of my clients, the Prizers, who, as you know by now, live next door. I wanted to focus the board in on this uniqueness requirement. As you know, it is a requirement, and frankly, in the simplest of terms, there's nothing unique about this lot at all. I'm going to show the board. I have copies of the development plat, which was approved by the city.
Thank you.
These are the 2 pages of the approved development plan, approved some years ago, approximately 10 years ago or so. And I've highlighted in pink, obviously, the subject lot. And I didn't want to bring a large copy. I know it's difficult to see, but both the size, the shape, and even the topography of this lot is just like all the other ones in this development. In fact, I highlighted on the second page for the board's reference, in even smaller print, a comparison of 2300 Whitley, which is, the lot area is 12,000, if you can see it, 12,335 feet. If you look at the bottom of the second page, the average lot area is actually smaller, approximately 9,600 feet. So this is one of the largest lots in this development. Also, I wanted to point out is the lot coverage for 2300 Whitley Road. If you look at the chart, all the way to the right is 16.6%. If you look down at the bottom, the average lot coverage for lots on the city portion of the development is 22%. So number one, this is one of the biggest lots. It's also, if you peruse this, you'll see that this is one of the lots with the lowest lot coverage. So again, nothing unique about this lot in terms of its size, its shape, or its topography. And what I think really, folks, what I think this application is really all about is that the rear yard is too small. It's 31 feet. It's a small yard, and that's the difficulty. But think about that for a second. That is not the uniqueness or the difficulty that the code requires. If that were the case, then every single variance would be granted. In other words, say you had a 35-foot high residence, Mr. Chairman, and that was the height requirement, and you wanted to build a 45-foot high house, but you couldn't because of the limitation in the code. Simply saying, and this is essentially what they're saying today, that the house, we want a bigger house or a taller house, isn't the difficulty that the code requires. It would be a self-fulfilling, I'm trying to think the best way to articulate what I'm trying to say, other than the fact that the code itself, that is the limitation, can't be what imposes the practical difficulty or unreasonable hardship, if you follow me. And that's what's happening here. They simply have a small backyard. And having a small backyard, there's nothing unique about it, which I'll get to in a minute, and there's nothing difficult about it. In fact, setback limitations, whether they're the rear yard, the side yard, or the front yard, they're supposed to impose limitations. They're supposed to impose difficulties. That's what they do. So we've heard nothing this morning, and I'm unaware of anything else that would suggest anything other than the simple fact that these folks have, unfortunately, have a small backyard. But that's why we have setbacks.
Mr. McCann, doesn't having a small backyard, doesn't that create uniqueness?
No, that's my point.
And I'll follow it up with, isn't it unique to have a rear yard that backs up to a side yard?
Well, maybe I didn't articulate it as well as I could have, but having a small backyard if that's the argument, is basically saying that the 30-foot setback in the rear is what's imposing the difficulty. And that's a self-fulfilling, if that's probably the best way to describe it, prophecy. A variance would always be granted. Side yard setback of 25. If you had 26 feet and you wanted to build something on the side, you simply couldn't. But the fact that there is that limitation in and of itself can't create the practical difficulty, if you follow me. There's got to be something about the land itself, the land.
Or the structure.
Or the structure.
Land or the structure.
Right.
City code can allow a finding for uniqueness of the land itself or the structure that is existing.
Correct. And on that point,
follow up with another question as, are there any other decks or any other additions to any other home in this neighborhood that currently violate the setback as built?
That I'm unaware of. What I do have, to your point though, is I do have, I'll hand these out to everyone.
Thank you.
So what this is this is the section of the development that's in the city. You can see there's a dotted line at the top. There's 51 homes, and the second page is just a blow up of the homes to the bottom because it got cut off. But there are 51 homes in this section of the development. I highlighted in yellow all of the homes that have a deck. So there's 26 out of 51, just over 50%. Not 2/3, but just over 50% have decks. What I did also is outline, rather than highlight, outline all of the lots that, based on the development plan, looked like there was rear yard limitations. That is, the rear yard was either 30 feet or 31 feet or something close to it. So those are outlined if you follow in either blue or black ink, and I think there's 10 of those. So there's at least 10 homes in this development that have small backyards that do not have decks. Those folks are living, they're surviving, assumedly. And then lastly, what I highlighted in green, importantly, I didn't want to leave anything unaware of so the board knows there were 2 variances that have been granted. Those are the 2 houses that I've colored in green on this exhibit. And the main reason I put that in there was, and I don't know the specifics of those cases, I haven't looked at those decisions, frankly, but what I wanted to point out, we don't know why they were granted or why they weren't granted. What I wanted to point out is none of those homes or their decks would be in the front yard, not the side yard. This deck is going to be in the front and the side yard of these folks' homes. No other deck in the neighborhood would have that sort of impact, including the 2 for which variances have already been granted. If you can just take sometimes it's difficult to look at something this small, but I've looked at it closely. None of the homes, either existing decks or one that could be put in the future, would have an impact on someone's front yard. Now, that doesn't make this lot unique. You may say, well, that sounds unique, Mr. McCann. That doesn't make the lot unique. What it makes is the impact on my clients different than someone else. For instance, the person at the top of the page, where I have outlined in blue, 6539 Pebblebrook, that person does not have a deck now. If that person decided to put a deck on, that deck would not be in his neighbor's or her neighbor's front and side yards. So,
Mr. McCammon, let me ask you a question. From what I've seen through the pictures, there are sliders with some temporary fencing. I'm not describing it very well, but you know what I mean. How big of a deck could, if they would have had Beazer build a deck when they bought the house, how big of a deck could they have put on there?
the variance, the 30-foot setback has always been 30 feet, so they couldn't have put one on. And I listen, when I found that out, when I saw the pictures that have this door, and I had a townhouse several years ago where it was just like that. We never built a deck. It was just there. But the fact that the builder did that, unfortunately, and maybe even, who knows, misrepresented to these folks that they could build a deck, is not really for this board's review. That's not a difficulty. I mean, they may have an issue with the builder, frankly. If the builder told them that you can have a deck, if they built a model in which the builder represented that you can have a deck with this model, that's a problem they have with the builder. I really don't think, frankly, that that point, this unfortunate aspect of this case where you have a door that just doesn't have a walkout to it, is legally irrelevant, in my opinion, to the standards that the board looks at today.
But
for
on your
instance,
exhibit, kind of going back to that same property that you just mentioned, it's like a triangular lot.
Yeah.
I guess it's 6539.
Yeah.
So the structures marked with yellow, they do have decks?
Correct.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so 6537 has a deck.
Yep.
It has roughly the same rear yard as the property immediately to its south at 6535, and they don't have a deck. Then the property to the south of them do not have a deck, and the property to the south of them do have a deck. They all have similar rear yards, so I guess where I'm going with this is that it was clear in the, or at least seems to be, that the development plan when this whole property was platted and subdivided was to provide decks that may or may not currently violate the setback. So that would have been considered during site development and subdivision to essentially grant variances for various decks throughout this neighborhood for certain properties, if the contract purchaser wanted a deck, or did not. So I just find it odd that that process would have played out through site development and through site planning, and that certain properties have decks that violate a setback, and now we're here with folks in opposition to a deck that other folks have.
Well, a couple of things about that.
If
Number
you're
one,
seeing kind of like where I'm
yeah,
going
no, I
with
know
that.
exactly what you're saying. No, it's a good question. It's a fair question. I would say the vast majority of these yellow decks, mainly the ones along the bottom on Pebblebrook, and a few of the other ones in what I'll call the middle of the plat, the backyard is clearly big enough. I mean, that's why I attached this second page. The ones along Pebblebrook, all of these houses have plenty of room in the backyard. So I think it's only a few lots in the sort of the center here where the either a variance was granted or, frankly, a deck may be in violation, may have been built without approval, or they meet it. It's hard to tell That's why I gave the board the development plan. And I guess the issue that you just raised about the development plan approval, I'm not so sure, I don't know for a fact, that it was disclosed during the development plan process that all of these homes would have decks. I think that's an assumption that we should not make. And that the planning office, when it looked at this plan, said, well, when we approve this, we're going to approve all these homes with decks. We know they're going to have, I don't think there's any support for that. And I've looked through the development plan file to obtain this from the planning office and didn't see anything to that effect. So again, all that, I don't think that's something the board can or should consider, frankly, that this development plan was approved with a lot of small backyards, or really not a lot, several, in the heart of the plan. That's something that, again, the applicants may have a problem with the developer about. But, and who knows, if you look at this development plan, I think, frankly, a lot of these homes may have been sited on the lot in such a way that prevented a deck from being built. These are just building envelopes on the development plan, as you know. So the house could have been sited in such a way to allow for a small deck. Just a couple other points, and I think I've done enough talking. I wanted you to hear from my clients. The applicant has asked for both a deck and a porch. I wanted to point out, and I looked closely at all the permits that have been granted. There's 3 roads at play here. There's Whitley Road, Pebblebrook, and then there's Clarington. And I have just one copy. I didn't want to make a whole bunch of copies for purposes of saving trees. What I did is I went through all of the permits issued for the decks on those 3 roads, and they're highlighted to correspond to that prior exhibit. So they're either yellow or there's 2 green. All of those permits, if you look at them, there isn't a single deck and porch combination on Whitley, this road, or Clarington, not one. On Pebblebrook, and there's a lot of the decks are on Pebblebrook, only 3 of those homes have a deck and a porch. So my point is, and I think this is covered more by the case law than it is by the code, an applicant has to request the least amount of variance that's necessary, that imposes, in other words, that imposes the difficulty. And I think this applicant is asking too much by asking for both of those things, number one. The other thing that I would like to point out is there's no reason why this applicant couldn't put a patio in their backyard without seeking any variance at all. They could finish their basement. Apparently, they have an unfinished basement. Those are options to them, and I haven't heard anything about any reasons why they wouldn't be allowed to do those sorts of things, if in fact they need additional room for entertainment and things of that type. So with that, I'll stop talking. I'll let my clients have a word with you. And go ahead.
Good afternoon. My name is Tzvi Preiser. I can spell that for you. T as in Tom, Z as in zebra, V as in Victor, I as in igloo. That's the first name, Tzvi. Preiser is P as in Paul, R, E as in Edward, I as in igloo, S as in Sam, E as in Edward, R as in Robert. Okay. We are very concerned about the proposed deck that the Lazaros are putting forth. It is a large deck, as Mr. McCann pointed out. It's 16 feet extending into his backyard. That would be about 15 feet away from our property line. And it contains both an open deck and a screened-in porch, which is 27 feet wide. Although the applicant is suggesting that this is just a plain old simple deck, just like any other deck, number one, the size. Number two, the combination of being a screen-in porch. But more importantly, number three, is that this situation is different because it's facing our front yard. I don't know if you see the pictures. It seems like every other situation that you would look at, you have a backyard deck, you have another backyard. So you're not facing the neighbor's front yard. And that's very important to us. It's also, I will point out that the The deck is directly facing our bedroom windows, which would be about 15 feet or so away, or from our property line, and our bedroom windows are right there. You can see, as one of the pictures there shows, the view from our bedroom window right into their backyard. It's very close. So,
Before you move on,
yeah.
just maybe direct your attention, which photo is what? This packet has 5 photos. So the third photo in that's your house on the right, obviously, right?
Right.
Okay.
That's the front of our house, and that's directly looking at the back of his house. So he's proposing to make this deck come out right there. It's going to face the front of our house.
And then I guess the fourth photo in this the package is taken from the window indoors.
Taken from our master bedroom window, looking right outside into his backyard where he's proposing to build his porch.
And the last photo looks to be one taken tonight.
Same view.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
So there are several concerns that come from such a situation. Having a large deck that is immediately near our front yard, our front porch, it impacts our privacy and our comfortability while we're coming and going to a front of our house, sitting on our front porch. Just the use of the area while he's sitting and they're sitting on their deck at the same time. The proximity to our bedroom will impede the ability or the comfortability of being able to open our windows. If we're sitting in our bedroom and we open our window, would we just turn around and say, "Hi, Alan, how you doing?" It's just makes it for a very uncomfortable situation because of the proximity to our bedroom window. So we won't be able to open our windows for air. We won't be able to open our shades for light because we're just going to turn right outside and look at him, and he's going to look into our bedroom.
Let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
So the photographs you handed out, I'm looking at the house next, this next house here.
Yeah.
And I see a deck here.
Correct.
And I see your house here.
Correct.
Is the distance between here and here going to be any less than the distance between here and here if the deck is built?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
Correct.
I would think so, Mr. Chairman. I think rough, it's hard to know. We're looking at-
And we're doing, I gathered it, yeah.
Good.
Okay. I don't think that we're, that deck, whether it was done with, their rights or not, that's not up for discussion, I'd assume. Okay. So, being in close proximity, directly affects our privacy. Now, in my very first conversation, after the hearing notice went up on his front lawn, Alan gave me a call and was concerned about, how we were going to react to it. I expressed my concerns to him directly, and his response was, I don't care about privacy. You've been living next to me for 7 years, and you know that I don't even have shades on the windows in the back of my house. And so why would I care about your privacy? We do care a lot about privacy. Having a neighbor that frankly doesn't care about privacy is particularly concerning, especially when he's building a deck that's right immediately next to our bedroom and next to our kids' bedroom and next to and facing our front yard. So that is a big concern. Another concern is the noise. Whether it be from family gatherings on the weekends, whether it be from social gatherings in the evenings, we're going to hear that directly in our house because of the proximity. So whether it be our bedroom window, which is right there, our kids' bedroom window, or on the front corner facing that deck, they're going to hear all the noise that's going on. As an example, take Mr. Flum's testimony from before, and he called Alan a party animal. I wasn't going to go so far, but that's his testimony. Alan frequently has parties Thursday night. It's been going on for years. Social gatherings, guys get together, they play poker, I don't know what they do. So they last late into the night.
but it's not my business. But I have every reason to believe that he's building a screen-in porch, that he plans on moving that to the screen-in porch, and that concerns me because then it's going to disturb our routine schedules and kids going to sleep, us going to sleep, and hearing people talking outside late at night.
Quick question. On
Yeah.
that point. If they built a patio, as your council suggested, couldn't they have parties to all hours of the night and have the same noise issue?
Potentially, it's possible they can.
Won't have lighting.
They won't be as close. We have to realize that although they're calling it a first-story deck, this is a second-story deck because their basement takes up a story, and then this is on top of that. So this is a kind of a second-story deck, so it's lifted up. So now you're dealing with it being closer and and directly across from the bedrooms. Okay.
But more to that point, and kind of jumping off from what you just testified to, how is a deck any greater of an impact than a patio? So if they poured a whole bunch of concrete here, and had a grill, and a little, I don't know, pergola, and a bunch of lawn chairs, and they did all this stuff on a concrete patio, how is that any less of an imposition to you and your property and your family than doing that up on a deck?
Right. So again, you have the impact of it being directly across from the bedroom, which is different in the sense that it's higher up and it's directly across from the bedroom. So you were talking about the privacy of the bedroom. We're talking about the noise being closer because it's a floor up, right? That's it is closer and it is more on level. So you're dealing with a more of an impact.
Okay.
Yeah. And then also another point to that, which leads me to my next point, is that the other impact that I see is, and that we're concerned about, is to the value of the home. What does this deck, this proposed deck, as a large structure, 16 feet coming out into facing our front yard, how does that impact our resaleability of our home and the value of our home? When someone comes up and let's say we put our home up for sale and, we have potential buyers coming up the front yard and they see this deck, protruding out right in front of them, they're going to think 3 times before buying this house. They're going to think about all the privacy and noise points that I spoke about before. Now, we had a personal experience in trying to sell our previous home. There was a neighbor that built a large structure immediately next to our house. And when we came to sell our home, it was in a high demand area. And we had a challenge selling our home because, one of the local agents actually told our listing agent, they said, well, we're not going to show it to our clients anymore because they're complaining about the house next door. They built a large structure that's immediately adjacent. And for various reasons, that's unappealing. So that's going to affect the value of our home. That is going to be very different when you build a deck that's a second-story deck that's coming out 16 feet and it's 27 feet, wide, than just putting a couple of pavers down on the floor. The applicant is saying that they need some more room. They're desperate for more room. I don't understand why a 3,500 square foot home is not sufficient. Either way, many homes in the neighborhood don't have decks. I personally don't have a deck. I know that like was said before, there are sliders in the back, but Beazer did not offer the option to make decks. That was not part of the plans in terms of an option when you bought a house. Contrary to what I think they want you to believe, it wasn't an option. Everyone who built a deck built it on their own.
I'm sorry, but so no decks, no houses were built with decks?
Beazer did not offer the option. There were all kinds of options. You could potentially do a sunroom if you're allowed for it. You can do a bump out. You can do all kinds of things. But Beazer did not offer to make a deck. Yeah.
Did you
Can I just add a few things? Hi, do I need to introduce myself? Miriam
State your name for
Prizer.
the record, yeah.
M-I-R-I-A-M, Prizer. Not all properties in our area are created equal. Not everybody was allowed to build a sunroom. If you wanted that extra space, you had to pick a property that was going to allow for it. There were a lot of specifications when picking, and that's something that they should have known. They should have been aware of the size of their property and what their limitations were going to be, and if this was going to be something that's really important to them, they should have considered that in choosing this location. And as far as how the differences between the effect of a deck versus a patio doesn't have the same lighting, it's not enclosed for screens, and it just is not as enjoyable to use at night, in the dark. So something like that would be very comfortable to use during the day, but large parties at night would not typically be hosted, in an unscreened open area. So if you could please consider that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
I'm just going to wrap up and then
Sure.
turn it over since this is the last word that we have. Obviously, this is a tough issue. These folks bought a, assumedly an expensive home and with the intent to put a deck on. But again, that is not what's before the board. The one thing I did want to focus the board on is everything my folks just said goes to that part of the standard that requires the board to consider whether the variance would be injurious to the use and enjoyment of their property. That is a requirement. In other words, for the board to approve this variance, in my opinion, you would have to find that this variance would not be injurious to the use and enjoyment of their property. And I think I would be hard pressed to draw that conclusion, given the proximity of the proposal to their house. And then finally, I just wanted to make one, maybe the most important point clear, and that is my folks, the impact to them is unique. That is, they are the only home in these 51 homes that would be impacted in the same way with a deck and a porch in their front and side yard. But that's not the uniqueness that the code speaks to. The uniqueness the code speaks to is the uniqueness of the property itself. So I didn't want, and sometimes my clients confuse that in their mind as well. I just wanted to make that point clear. The impact is unique, but the property is not. And then finally, just on that, as I pointed out in the development plan, all the lots are of similar size and shape. The development plan itself, which is the approved document from the city, actually says on the second page that the rear yard setback is 30 feet. So I guess to Mrs. Prizer's point that regrettably, the applicant should have known that they didn't have the opportunity to build a deck when they purchased the house.
Great.
One little point.
If you could do it quickly,
Yeah,
please.
quickly. Just wanted to, I forgot to address, there was the point of the letters, the 12 or 14 or so letters. I just wanted to point out that the letters were not from, and I haven't seen a copy of the letters, but I'm pretty certain that the letters are not from immediate neighbors. So they could be letters from neighbors in the neighborhood, and they could be from down the block, but what relevance does it have if the person down the block is not necessarily even seeing the deck, only as he drives by? So,
Mr. Butler, can you provide a copy of the letters real quick while Mr. Prettle sums up, so you can? I want you to be able to see them.
yeah. So although some of the witnesses here are saying that they are an immediate neighbor, well, if they're across the street and they're across the front of the house, they're not even going to see the deck.
Right.
So, and whoever the letters are, but
What
it's,
we'll do is, we'll give you an opportunity, if you want to bring up an issue related to the list of the letters, we'll let you bring that up.
Thank you.
While we're on the topic of letters, I should also submit this preliminary approval from the Park at Mount Washington Community Association, which I believe is in your file, but because of the computer issues. So in response, we've heard a lot from the opposition about many different reasons, and to me, in total, what we've been hearing is why all of the other properties in the Park of Mount Washington are different from this one, and why what has been built on those does not apply here. That directly speaks to the uniqueness, which is at the heart of this variance we're seeking today, in combination with the fact that this is not, frankly, it's not in their front yard at all. if from a zoning standpoint or from a practical standpoint. It's not in their front yard, it's in their side yard. And this was proposed in a way that entirely meets the requirements of the side yard requirements under the zoning code. It doesn't meet the rear yard. And just, as not to dwell on the uniqueness, because I think I've given enough to the board to make that finding, but on the second page of what Mr. McCann distributed, you can see all the properties along Whitley Road. There's 5 properties. There's one that is clearly very different from the rest of them, both in terms of the orientation of the lot, the orientation of the structure, and how that impacts the yard requirements. In regards to some of the zoning statements on this, remember, we're operating under a completely separate zoning code that when this was developed than we are right now. And before I'll let Mr. and Mrs. Lazaro talk about some of these personal issues if they should choose to, but remember, this is something that was anticipated as part of the development, whether they say it or not. There's no misrepresentation from the builder. We're here going through the process that is now called for a unique property. And just to address the whether or not this is injurious to the neighbors, say by the definition of the yard requirements under the zoning code, which this meets, this is their side yard. They're building something that comes entirely within what someone would expect for having a side yard. Not only have their own, they have this one as well. And so I'll let Mr. Lazaro say a few
Mr.
words.
Lazaro, we're here for a land use issue, so I would ask you to.
I'm going to stick to uniqueness and injury. I'm really going to stick to that. I was here for the last hearing, so a couple of factual pieces. I know my neighbors are going to want to address this. The preliminary approval that you received, what happened there was we submitted the approval. They gave for the request. They approved it, and then after there was an opposition, they said they are reconsidering the approval. So I just wanted to be open about the status of that. They're waiting to see what happens here. It is 1,000% false to say that Beazer did not build decks. Completely false. What happened was the Prizers. I know this because I looked at my house. I looked at the Prizers' house. I chose to buy my house. They were built. Other people designed them and built them, and they were signed. They were contingency contracts where if the buyer couldn't sell their other house, then somebody else could swoop in and take it. For those houses that were already built, they weren't going to. They were already done. The fiscal year was ending. They wanted to move the houses. They weren't going to build decks. But if you were designing the house from the beginning with Beazer Homes, as the people who designed my house did, as evidenced by the fact that there's a sliding door, it absolutely was an option. And only because folks probably don't want me to put their names on the record, I'm not going to. But I can represent that. I know individuals that Beazer they use the monopoly money that Beazer would give you for options for decks 1,000%. Let's talk about privacy. If I would submit that if my neighbors who are here opposing the project wanted real privacy, they moved to the wrong neighborhood. The fact is, you can see the papers in front of you. Our houses were built incredibly close to each other. This was a surprise to nobody. I would submit that if my neighbors who are here opposing the project wanted privacy, they didn't just move to the wrong neighborhood, they moved to the wrong house. As evidenced by all of the pictures, our houses are a mere 41 feet apart. We've heard the backyard's too small. Well, it probably is, but that probably means it's unique. As you'll see in pictures 1 and 2, there's really little room between our houses. I would submit that there's no deprivation of privacy by virtue of this project because there can be no deprivation of privacy when there is no privacy in the first place. I can unfortunately look out my window and watch basketball being played, football being thrown around at any time. And it would be one thing if our house was built sometime after our neighbors purchased the property, and this would be a surprise. But our neighbors purchased their home after I purchased my house, which again, they can see as clear as day in the back, a sliding door. Picture number 6 is very important in the pictures that I submitted. That's a picture of our shared neighbor's deck, which is quite close to my neighbor's house. I haven't, to your question, I'm not sure I measured it, but it's very, very close. And whereas our project would be below those windows, our shared neighbor's deck is above those windows, looking in. So to the extent there's a concern about selling the house, well, that concern is going to be there by virtue of the fact that the neighbor has a deck, which is, in his words, looking into their bedroom window. Nothing is going to change for them in how they use their side property. Again, there's 41 feet between the back of my house and the corner and the side corner of their house. 31 of those feet are mine, 10 of those feet are there. Obviously, so the question is, what are the types of activities that they can do in those 10 feet? There's no patio there on their side. There's no barbecue there on that side. The only thing they do with that space is occasionally throw the football and baseball around. Now, we don't care that, and we don't ask them to stay off of our property when their boys throw the ball around and they inevitably go over the 10-foot line. But when our deck is
Well,
built,
again, let's stick to your deck.
well, the question is, what's the impact on their 10 feet? And I guess my point is that they're still going to be able to do the same things that they're doing, and they're still going to have 15 more feet in my property to bleed over if, you know, the ball goes astray. And of course, I understand that that's going to happen. I heard something about. I let the record reflect that I believe Mr. Flum was being facetious when he said we're party animals. There were references to Thursday night parties. It's happened exactly 0 times that our neighbors have complained to us about these gatherings, which a rabbi comes and gives a sermon with friends. So that's a little bit silly. What we're asking for here is something that is consistent with what everybody else does. If you look at our lot, it's almost laughable to say that it's not unique. Just look at our lot and look at the other lots. It's completely different. For those reasons, for the reasons my neighbors stated, for the reasons stated in the 14 letters of support, and as evidenced by the 10 pictures I submitted, I would ask the board to approve our variance.
Okay. Mr. McCann, any comments on the list of letters or the letters?
I'll let my clients do that because I'm unfamiliar.
If I may, I can comment on that. There was a neighbor directly across the street from the Prizers. The name is Schriefer. I don't have their address. They see directly between our house and their house, and they wrote a letter in support.
Yeah, I have one final thing to add, that this is the minimal variance sort of necessary for the Lazaros to build what they're proposing to enjoy the use of their property. It really is, and it's going as little into the required yards, and if we switch the yards, as I've testified, it's not going into at all. So this is a very modest request to build something that is completely in character with the rest of the development, and I'd urge the board to approve it.
Again, just want to reiterate
Now, you're limited to
the letters.
Letters.
The letters, and
procedure before we started today.
Clarify
Right.
for the board.
the letters. He's referencing the Schriefers live across the street. Yes, they do come out and they will see that deck. But again, it's across the street, so it doesn't really impact them much. We're talking about where our direct neighbor, he's saying it's a side yard. I am,
Again, do you have any comments on the letters?
okay, that's it.
All right. Thank you all very much.
Can I address the HOA that they
No,
brought in last?
the hearing's over.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Next case, 2019-120, 3715 Yosemite Avenue. Sorry. 2019-120, 3715 Yosemite Avenue. We'll get you all sworn in. Actually, some of you have been sworn in, so you don't have to get sworn in again.
Raise your right hands, please. Do you swear or affirm the testimony that you're about to give in this hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Okay, would you state your name for the record, please?
Alicia Williams.
And Ms. Williams, we have this to use basement and first floor as 35 Care Child Care Center, is that correct?
Yes.
Good. Do we have any staff reports?
Yes, Planning Department reviewed this application, noted that this property is a detached dwelling in the R1 zoning district. However, it also noted that the requirement for a drop-off and pickup area, which could safely serve the number of children proposed, would be difficult to accomplish, specifically because of the narrowness of Yosemite Avenue at this location. From aerial photographs, it appears Yosemite Avenue is approximately 2.5 lanes wide, and cars parking on the street apparently don't. They actually park between the curb and the sidewalk in this area in order to allow cars to pass in the 2 lanes in the center of the paved area. The department recommends that the applicant work with the City Department of Transportation to discuss the possibility of creating a pull-out area in front of this particular property in order to provide a safe drop-off and pickup area. The property is 50 feet wide. With a driveway included, there is approximately a maximum of 40 feet of length available along Yosemite Avenue for the creation of a drop-off and pickup area. There is no drop-off and pickup area possible on the property itself as an off-street drop-off and pickup area. For this reason, the department is recommending deferral of a complete hearing of this application for 35 children to allow the applicant time to discuss creation of a possible paved pull-out area for vehicles in front of this property with the appropriate City of Baltimore agencies. Alternatively, the department would have no objection to approval of the application with a reduced capacity of 8 children, which would be a family daycare. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So, Mr. Williams, you've heard the planning department suggest that you may want to postpone this hearing to talk to them, and that decision will be up to you. We offer that to you if you want to.
So I'm going to postpone and talk to who?
Talk to the planning department. You're going to talk to the
Department of Transportation.
Department of Transportation,
Actually.
as outlined by the planning department.
Yes.
So
Okay. Yes.
You want to postpone?
Yes.
All right. Thank you very much. Are you all signed in? We'll let you know when the hearing will be held again. Okay? 2019-120 is postponed. Next case, 2019-133, 2223 Maryland Avenue.
He's got a rear deck he wants to build, and
Raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony that you're about to give in this hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
You do.
All right, Mr. Preble, state your name for the record, please.
Nate Prettle, AB Associates, here with Matthew Pierce, the owner of operator of the establishment of this property.
And Mr. Proto, we had this to add outdoor dining to restaurants, is that correct?
It's actually to add live entertainment to.
We have the,
There's a discrepancy between the staff report and the docket. Our apologies, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. The application itself is for live entertainment, which is in the interior of the property, if that's correct, Mr. Prettle? Mr. Prettle, that's the live entertainment being offered is in the interior of the property?
I'll get into this. In the interior as well as in the covered courtyard, which is important.
and this is 2223 Maryland?
correct.
Okay.
And there's also a conditional use application that kind of goes through all of the live entertainment requirements, as well as things like number of performers and decibel limits and all those sorts of things. We just simply made an error on the docket sheet.
That's quite all right. Do we have any staff reports?
Yes, Planning Department reviewed this application, noted, of course, that this property was authorized for use as a restaurant with outdoor dining in the courtyard between the 2 buildings on this property. There is no specific requirement in the urban renewal plan covering this area that would restrict the proposed use. However, the application states that live entertainment would consist of musical acts, several specified, including the term amplified musicians or disc jockeys. The sound level would be limited to 80 decibels, measured at 10 feet from any point on the structure. Because the restaurant's public seating areas consist of areas within the carriage house structure and underneath a canopy in the courtyard between the 2 buildings on the property, no amplified musical acts should be allowed outside the buildings or in the courtyard, as sound attenuation there would not be as great or effective as it would be within the carriage house building itself. The application states that live entertainment would occur on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday evenings and nights, ending at midnight on Friday nights and 11 p.m. on Saturday and Sunday nights. Although the maximum capacity is stated as 49 persons in the restaurant, no specific security plan is provided in the application. The department recommends that approval of this application be subject to these conditions, in addition to conditions which the board may establish. No amplified music or musical act is allowed outside of the existing carriage house structure, and amplification is prohibited in the courtyard area of the property. A copy of the use and occupancy permit for the premises is kept on the premises and available for inspection by representatives of Baltimore City at all times. A copy of the written approval by the board of the live entertainment provided on the premises, including details of any restrictions or limitations on live entertainment provided, must be kept on the premises and available for inspection by representatives of Baltimore City at all times. And a copy of all other permits and licenses required pursuant to the written approval of the board must be kept on the premises and available for inspection by representatives of Baltimore City at all times. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Prettle, if we were to approve this, are those conditions acceptable?
They are, other than the prohibition on live entertainment in the courtyard, and I'll get into why that's not acceptable to us, and it's a key feature of this
Okay.
application. Okay.
The floor is yours.
Sure. So good afternoon again, board. I'm here with Matthew Pierce, who's one of the co-operator of Fadensonen, which is a beer garden and wine and sake bar that some of the board members may be familiar with due to several hearings we had prior to the opening roughly a year ago. To give a little context in this application, during Transform Baltimore, the majority of the old Goucher neighborhood was rezoned to commercial in accordance with their vision plan. There was a section that, via an amendment from an old community person who's is no longer involved in the area, was switched to office residential. When we were not successful getting approval for this tavern and restaurant at the zoning board, Councilman Stokes, in coordination with the community association, rezoned these properties as originally proposed to C1. This is all tying into the Old Goucher Vision Plan, and I'll read this and submit a letter from the Old Goucher Community Association. Old Goucher Community Association strongly supports Fadensonen's application for a live entertainment license. The creation of a vibrant Old Goucher central core filled with small-scale restaurants and venues for live entertainment has been a key feature of the Old Goucher Vision Plan adopted in 2018. I'll stop there. And so the point being, this is something that was anticipated by both the community and the city for years. The Old Goucher Vision Plan was a several-year planning process that culminated in a document that now guides development in Old Goucher. And I'll let Mr. Pierce talk about why we think this proposed live entertainment will not be a negative impact to the surrounding neighborhood, and it's specifically designed to ensure that it's not creating a negative impact. But to give a little context of where this outdoor area is located, and to call it outdoor is not entirely accurate. I think everybody, it seems, is okay with the live entertainment on the second floor of the carriage house. The outdoor area, as part of our second application to the zoning board for the original approval, the development team and the operators thought that adding a covering to the property would get us around a restriction within the neighborhood commercial establishment provision of the zoning code. It didn't. We were turned down, and we went to the city council to get the proper approvals. But so that structure has been built and is in place. And so there are 4 walls as well as a covering. So to say it's outdoor is not entirely accurate. And the surrounding properties include, to the east, an art gallery. To the west and north is state and city office complex. And to the due north is a police substation as well as a rooming house that's set back from, that's on the West 23rd Street side. So this is a conditional use that has been called for by the vision plan and by the city council for several years. And I'll let Mr. Pierce talk a little bit about the specific acts, and hopefully that'll provide a little comfort to the board because it's really proposed to be background music, is my understanding.
Yes. Hi, I'm Matthew Pierce. I own the business with my wife, Lane Harlan. We also own W.C. Harlan Bar, Tavern, and Clabell Restaurant, which are 2 blocks away. We've had W.C. Harlan for 6 years, Clabell for 4 years. And at all of these establishments, we have music in the background. Our money comes from selling drinks and food and the atmosphere and conversation. It's the same thing at this place. We have music in the background. In the courtyard outside, we have a pavilion, and the courtyard has 4 walls around it. We have speakers in the pavilion, Sonos speakers, that has inside the carriage house a little amplifier that's Wi-Fi. Wired speakers on the outside. We plan to use the amplifier. There's an out on the back of that. You can plug RCA cable in, put it into a mixer, and you can have a single person or a duo playing ambient, atmospheric music. You probably would call it New Age in the past. Atmospheric music, it's not a show. We don't want to have shows. We want to have music in the background, sometimes live. Maybe somebody's playing records at times, somebody's playing a guitar. It would go through the same system as the existing speakers. It would be no louder. You wouldn't know the difference, except for you'd see somebody doing it. It's a nice sort of atmospheric touch. But the point of this place is conversation, drinks, the food, not shows. It would be in the background, and it's basically completely enclosed under this structure. And with all due respect to the planning department, our other businesses have never had any complaints, and we sort of listen to our neighbors. That's who we take our cues from. When we had problems with parking, when we first came into the neighborhood with Clavel, we talked to our neighbors. We went to the Department of Transportation, got a street turned one way so we could have angled parking. We got more bike racks put in because we talked to the neighbors ourselves. Same thing with security. They had concerns over there. We went and hired security. We've paid for 4 years every night ourselves after talking to the neighbors ourselves. So it would be the same thing with this new business. If our neighbors had issues, we would communicate with them. I understand you don't want to set a precedent, but we listen to our neighbors. We never had any complaints. This would be quiet, and again, not paid shows, no covers. It would just be in the background.
And you're going to limit the sound to a maximum of 80 decibels?
Well,
That's in your application.
yes, I don't think, I feel that the voice volume could exceed that at times, but the music certainly would not. I mean, I don't know what the ambient sound of a courtyard is if there's 50 people, but yes, we would keep music below 80 decibels. It's never been, we've been open now for 6 months. We've never had a single complaint. We have music playing out there in the speakers. We had 300 tickets sold last weekend for an event, a food event, multiple venues, vendors, and no complaints. The ambient volume of people talking.
I'd like the BMZA to set for your proposed live entertainment or dancing, so that would
I'm
be
sorry,
the live entertainment.
what was the first part of that?
This is what you're asking us to set for your proposed live entertainment, which is 80 decibels.
Yes, we're happy. I'm just explaining that music, that speaks to the music.
Yeah, I get that
Yes.
ambient, the people noise. Okay.
Can you describe this courtyard structure that's currently there?
Sure.
Yeah, it's about 45 by 45 feet square. There's an apartment building on the west side, then the courtyard, and then a carriage house. So on two sides, it's got an apartment building and a 2-story carriage house.
Mhm.
On the other sides, there's a 6 or 7 foot wall on either side. So it's completely enclosed with a little gate that you can walk into. And then in the middle, there's a 16-foot high pavilion that's got greenhouse sort of glass on the top, and then another level, a second level, it's 2-tiered with more greenhouse type glass or plastic. And so that's in the middle of the courtyard. So it's completely enclosed on all sides and on the top. The speakers we have now are currently inside the pavilion, and I don't even think you can hear it from the street.
Okay. Any other questions from the board? No. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next, 2019-136, 903 to 905 West 36th Street.
Raise your right hands, please. Do you swear or affirm the testimony that you're about to give in this hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
And just state your name for the record, please.
Yes, Al Barry, B Associates.
Now, Mr. Berry, we have this to add live entertainment to dance studio, school, and art gallery. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And do we have staff reports?
I have a letter of support from the Hamden Community Council. There's also MOU, that is an executed MOU that's on file that I'm sure they'll discuss as part of their testimony.
Planning Department reviewed this application, Noted that in this particular zoning district, this is the C1 zoning district, live entertainment accessory to a restaurant, tavern, art studio, or art gallery is a conditional use. This property was last authorized for use as a retail goods establishment with no alcoholic beverage sales, which is a permitted use. That would include an art gallery, but does not appear to include a dance studio or school. Live entertainment that is not accessory to a restaurant, tavern, art studio, or art gallery is a prohibited use, according to the zoning code. The tavern would be a conditional use in the C1 zoning district. The floor plan provided with this application shows a bar, that's the term used there, with 8 seats, but does not indicate if alcoholic beverages would be served from it to those 8 patrons seated there, or to patrons seated in the area named Upper House on the floor plan. The floor plan, together with the application text, do not describe how the proposed live entertainment would be accessory to an art gallery or to, as an alternative, a tavern. The application also states live entertainment would consist of most forms of live entertainment allowed, other than karaoke or disc jockeys. However, no maximum decibel level for recorded music or amplified sound is stated in the application. The maximum authorized load for the proposed establishment is not stated in the application, although its concept plan 1 included with the application has at various places numbers that could be references to patrons. There is no security plan included in the application. The Department of Planning recommends a deferral of a complete hearing of the application to allow the applicant time to provide sufficient information for the board to make a determination concerning the actual proposed use. Thank you.
Ms. Barry, you heard the comments. If you would like to postpone to address those, we would be okay with that, or you can move forward today.
Well, we'd like to move forward. I'm frankly disappointed at the planning department's continued reliance on presenting you and the applicants a position the day of the hearing. We have been working on this project for 7 or 8 months now with the community, as evidenced by the MOU with a number of organizations in Hamden, Business Association, and more importantly, the Community Association. David Rosenberg, who was with me, who is the operator, is essentially creating, and this has been discussed with the neighborhood for many, many months, a creative alliance in North Baltimore. Creative Alliance facility, which is there's an existing use. This is a 1908 photograph of the Ideal Theater. That is a movie studio or movie house, and it's going to be restored and has been used as an arts facility for a number of years now. And there are dance lessons there are yoga studios, there are art galleries, there are any number of activities that have been going on in full view for many years. And that's why the community has come in support of this this application to allow live entertainment operated by Mr. Rosenberg in this same space.
To be clear for the record, you are not postponing your movement.
No, we're not. We're not moving forward. We think we like to think that we meet the standards for conditional use. We've worked hard to get the community's trust and support, Councilwoman's trust and support. We thought when we started this that one of the major issues was going to be parking. There's no parking requirement in terms of the zoning code, but we knew the community was going to have a parking issue. So we developed a relationship with the Rotunda, which will basically provide free parking for the theater, for patrons of the theater. And what will happen is that people that will go to the theater, the performances, whatever's held there, will be able to park free at the Rotunda, which is several blocks away. There will be vans or transportation provided at the parking garage at the Rotunda to drive down to and drop them off and then drive them back. Their Rotunda has about a 600 to 700 space parking garage. They are looking forward to having tenants of their facility have free transportation down to this. They are looking forward to have additional people that are going to be going to the facility, coming back to the Rotunda. So we have that agreement. I think it's in your file as well. So I'd like to say that David Rosenberg, who is here, can describe his activities and what he hopes to have here. But if you think of it, there's also a relationship because of the alcohol prohibition on alcohols. There's a relationship with the adjacent Five and Dime restaurant. When this really started, it was seen as one facility operated by the Five and Dime Restaurant and David Rosenberg under one ownership of the properties. In the course of this discussion with the neighborhood, the property that's owned by Five and Dime was sold to the owners of Five and Dime. And so what is going to happen, and we have the consent of the liquor board on this, is that Five and Dime will provide catered alcohol sales in the facility when there are events that need it. So there's not a bar that's open during the day, there's not a bar that people can just go to. If there's a performance, whether it's a cabaret, whether it's a comedy show, whether it's a band coming in for a performance, the Five and Dime will have has a catering license. They will provide food and drinks in the facility. The requirement of the liquor board is that when that performance is done, they have to move it back. You're not allowed to store it on premise. So this is a pretty tightly controlled situation. We think it's unique to Baltimore. In a way, it'll operate essentially like the Creative Alliance, which has performances now. They sell alcohol in their facility. And we'd like the board to approve a conditional use, which we think is consistent with 36th Street in Hamden. There are a number of restaurants on this. Again, if there was ever going to be a concern, it would have been about parking. And with the agreement with the Rotunda, which is in your file, we think we've met that burden as well. And maybe David Rosenberg can answer some questions about how he's going to operate this.
Mr. Bumgarner, do we have in our packet the complete live entertainment application? It seems like we're missing a few. I was looking for based upon some recent cases, I was looking for the decibel levels, but I didn't see it in here.
We have it in the file. It was submitted late, I believe, but I have that here, and I can pass it down for the board's review. And while I do that, Mr. Berry, what is this live entertainment accessory to? I'm looking through the permit record, and if it's accessory live entertainment, there has to be a primary use of the property, or primary uses plural. So what are the current authorized uses of this property that this live entertainment will be accessory to?
The current uses of it, I can't say, since we're not representing the current users, but the lease for that is to a, what's it called?
It's the Ideal Art Space, and they have dance lessons, yoga retreats, art shows, various community events in the space already.
But are those activities authorized uses? And I bring that up because I was recently involved as a deponent in a case where a property was used for many different things by the arts community, and then the property was condemned because it was about to fall down and kill a number of people. So I'm asking, are those arts uses lawfully obtained permits for those different arts uses? And even though you may not be the tenant or the operator of those specific uses, your application is tied part and parcel with those primary uses.
Right, I can't say for sure what permits the existing owner of the building has obtained for them, but there is a lease with this arts organization that basically is using it for these different uses. I mean, we would have to get, if the board were to approve this, we would have to get a use permit applied for and an occupancy permit in accordance with this as an accessory use to that, what we think is an existing use.
What's the size of the primary use, square footage wise?
Yes.
5,100 square feet.
And what's the size of the accessory use?
5,100 square feet.
Well, we'll be using the same space.
We're using the same space, yes.
I'm not sure how you get to accessory.
Well,
it's got to be incident to and subordinate to. Maybe not quoting the zoning code directly, but we have. I think, as you know, we've traditionally looked at space. One of the things we looked at is the space, the accessory space, smaller than the primary use.
Well,
Can I speak to that?
yeah.
Yeah, please.
So again, David Rosenberg, for the record. So there's several different things I think the board should know. First of all, this is in essence a joint venture with the Five and Dime Ale House, who's providing the food and beverage through a catering agreement that I have with them. They're already zoned for live entertainment already. and they have 12,000 square feet. Okay, so this is an art space that's next door that they're going to be doing food and beverage catering during the live events. The community really is excited about this. This is really impactful for Baltimore. It's a cultural opportunity that currently is not in Baltimore at all at this size. Creative Line's much smaller. Most of the talent is jumping over Baltimore and going to Annapolis and DC. This is really also a first-class execution. The architects on the project have built Everyman Theater, Chesapeake Shakespeare Theater, a room at the Kennedy Center. It's been calibrated for sound by acousticians. So we're asking the board that, there's already live entertainment. The Hampton Community Council is already excited about this and approved it. The merchants are excited about it. We've worked hard for a year to get parking and free shuttle service. This is really going to be impactful and enjoyed by all of Baltimore.
Yeah, and understand, I'm not necessarily disagreeing with you about the positive impacts of the project. We just have to make it fit under zoning law.
Got it.
Well, one way to think of accessory is the amount of time that the principal use is open versus the amount of time that he may be having performances. Performances might start, for example, 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock and go till
7 to 12.
7 to 12, whereas the operation would be open the remainder of the time.
Okay.
And that's one way of considering accessory, the temporal aspect of it, rather than using the same location.
Mr. Baumgartner, in terms of accessory use, does the primary use have to be the same entity that is proposing the accessory use?
Not necessarily. They certainly have to be in the same lot.
Yeah.
An accessory use has to serve that primary use. So as long as they're on the same lot, I don't think there's any requirement that they would be under the same tenancy, or that they would be under like the same lease or something like that. What I'm trying to recall is that we had a hearing about a year ago in which, and name of the project and the building is escaping me, but it's where Earth Treks Hamden went and the brewery went, and there's a couple, it's essentially one big space with several tenant spaces, and what they proposed was live entertainment that would move within the space depending upon which tenant was doing which thing. So it was a one large space with multiple kind of open tenant spaces. There was a restaurant, there was a brewery, and the board had approved live entertainment, but without necessarily a fixed space.
Mm-hmm.
What I can't recall is that if that live entertainment was merely accessory to things in that building, or because of the nature of that site, would have been just simply allowed to exist independent and not accessory. And from my understanding about this space, it's a similar business plan, that there's multiple things that are going to be going on in the same space, and then live entertainment will be accessory to those. It might not move around, but it would be accessory and complementary to whatever authorized uses are permitted in that building.
Right, and as I said, it's not something that's being set up as a bar open to the public.
Right.
Basically, the alcohol is being catered by the next door operation, which is a very well-received restaurant in Hamden. It'll be moved in and out just as a purpose, and the rest of the time it can be open for principal use. So it's an unusual situation, I admit, but we hope 36th Street's become active and has a lot of restaurants with live entertainment approved by either the board or the liquor board, and it's a unique. David Rosenberg certainly has some experience in this, and gained the faith of both the merchants and the community association, which is not an easy bar to reach. And so,
well, I'm going to ask, and this will be your decision. I'm going to ask that you provide us with a little support for us to find that this is an accessory use.
Okay.
If you can send that in, and it's up to you. If you don't want to, we'll make a decision today.
No, we'll be glad to provide that to the board. The when we initially filed this, we were given advice, can't remember who it was, it's not a blame, that the live entertainment application didn't really apply. I don't know what reason that was. So we didn't get that application until just a few weeks ago by the staff. And so we filled that out. And if we needed to fill out more based on planning's request or what your own request today, we'll be glad to do that.
Okay. And also, I noticed that the hours are blank here. I mean, can you give us the hours of the live entertainment?
So the live entertainment
Days, week,
is.
and hours.
Yeah, sure. First of all, it's in very much detail in the MOU from the Hampton Community Council. It lists all the hours and the type of operation that I can and cannot do, and the noise levels, and all that's in the MOU. But in general, the hours are Monday through Thursday, approximately 7 to 12, although it's probably going to be shorter window than that.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah.
She's not on that.
Yeah, it's not on our sheet. I see it here. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, can I ask the question? So the question I have, especially for him, but for the board in general, would it make a difference to the board if the Five and Dime and I have a sublease to operate as an accessory in our space?
It could. I would like to see some legal support for your position. That's what I was asking Mr. Barrett.
Yeah, the issue that, again, started out, when this started over a year ago, frankly, it was it was two properties owned by one property owner.
Mm-hmm.
And there was discussion about consolidating that and making it as one combined, two different tenants, but basically then the accessory use became easier to define. Five and Dime decided to buy their own building, and then the issue is, has to be on the same lot. We couldn't meet that standard. So now we have to meet it a different way, which we think we do, and we'll
And
give
I'm not saying you're not going to meet it.
No, we'll be glad to provide that
Yeah.
to you.
Okay. All right, very good.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Okay, last case is 2019-138, 123 South Chester Street. How are you?
Good, how are you?
Good.
An eventful day.
You've had a full day of civics. You've had a full day of
A lot of
civics, sir.
experience, yes.
All right, raise your right hands. Do you swear or affirm the testimony that you're about to give this hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Good. Could you state your name, please?
Lindsay Crummy, that's LINDSAY CRUMMEY.
Mr. And Ms. Crummey, we have this to add outdoor dining to restaurant, is that correct?
Yes.
And staff reports?
Planning Department reviewed this application, noted that this property is in the R8 zoning district currently, in which neighborhood commercial establishments are a conditional use, and on that basis, the board approved the existing restaurant in its approval of appeal number 2017-289. At the request of Chester Street Properties LLC, which is the owner of this property, City Council Bill number 19-0356 was introduced on March 18th of 2019. The purpose of this bill is to amend the zoning district map for the property known as 123 South Chester Street to apply a row house mixed-use overlay district, or RMU designation, to this one property, the practical effect of which would be to make outdoor dining a conditional use at this location, as described in Section 12-1003B1 of the Zoning Code. This bill is in committee at present. For that reason, the department has no objection to the approval of the application upon effect of City Council Bill number 19-0356. Thank you.
Thank you. So tell us a little bit about what you're doing here.
So my husband and I opened Charmed Kitchen. It's on the corner of Pratt and Chester back early December. We'll full-fledged restaurant, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, open 7 days a week. And we're a neighborhood cafe and would like to add outdoor seating as an amenity to the neighbors. And we have full neighborhood support. I'm also a neighbor. I live across the street. And we want to activate that street corner in Butchers Hill.
And it looks like you've got some pretty wide sidewalks here.
Yeah, they're brand new.
And you have, looks greater than 6 feet between the the tree and the tables?
Yes.
Okay. Any questions? Great. Thank you. And that's it. Well, I failed you all.
What seemed like it was going to be a